That's 10 on the hands, Lindquist. Don't fuck with me.
Sorry.
Give me at least. Yeah, off and running on the deeper dive. We appreciate you hanging with us this Sunday evening, afternoon, hell, wherever you are in the planet. It's a Sunday, and we appreciate you with the 5-game slate that we have tonight to dive into live before lock at the top of this hour. Don't worry, Eric Lindquist is here. So I don't even know where this show is going to go, but I do know you will be informed. I do know at the end of the night, you'll make money. Jordan's here, so maybe you'll get a couple of picks, some memes that you can take home as far as a parting gift is out there. We just ask you to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe here to the Odd Shopper channel as well. Lindquist, what's happening, brother?
Not much. I'm out here in Arizona for a couple days, so made the trek over here where I can legally bet on sports, which has been awfully nice for sure. You can still play DFS here. I don't know when that changed, but they used to have nothing whatsoever when you came to Arizona. I used to fly into the Phoenix airport, couldn't even get in a contest for anything. So well done by Arizona to update that. I'll be back in LA here on Tuesday, but looking forward to hanging out with the family here a little bit, and then obviously playing some DFS as well.
What's the first bet you placed upon touching down in Arizona?
Shane Lowry, actually. I bet Shane Lowry to win outright. So I drove out here. So it's like a 5.5-hour drive, 6-hour drive from LA. But bet Shane Lowry. He's up 2 right now, which ended up working out nicely before this final round. Bet the 76ers as well. So you and I are both happy. That was a more competitive game than I expected it to be. I thought that they were going to run away with it. Knicks made a nice surge. And so then you get all these nice $50 free bets and stuff. If you go up to the deals section that we have on the main part of the site, you can deposit like $10 and get $200 from BetMGM. So I took advantage of my free $50 plays and made a little coin with your James Harden acquisition.
Oh my goodness. He has just been paying off exponentially. It's been amazing here. So that's the appetizer. That was the opening act earlier. We have a game going on right now, but we do have our 5 tonight. And before we veer too far off, and like now 35 to 40% of the chat says, get back to the game. Let's just preempt that and at least wet their beaks here. And let's look at this here. So we're going to start in Charlotte. Pretty decent line as expected. That total, though, pretty workable, upwards 229 and a half, where we were looking at it a little earlier. So let's start on the road in Detroit with the blowout factor still kind of lurking over the Pistons. Where are you really looking at as far as the field? You know, Olynyk is popping up right there at the top as far as ownership is concerned, at least with our projected ownership on Awesemo.
Yeah, this is a fascinating spot because you're looking at the high total. You're looking at a gigantic spread, 10.5 points here that Detroit's not favored here. And, you know, I always come on these shows. I'm used to the live before lock where I'm not necessarily going through all of the pieces of information that I'm inputting into my own projections, working on stuff. We have the best Awesemo minutes projections you will ever find. And so Kelly O is just an interesting talking point for this entire slate. I think that because of the power forward eligibility he has over on DraftKings, it makes a lot of sense to take some of those shots. That's why you're seeing the ownership where it is here. If he had center eligibility, you have to basically look at guys like Howard, Eubanks, Zubats, so many centers, and then Jokic at the top end. But because he's power forward eligible, there's a lot more lineups that he's going to fit in. Over on Fantasy Cruncher, I'm actually going to be placing him just to the power forward section. You can manually do that on DK. Makes a lot of sense to do that, I think, on this slate specifically. Charlotte, they're second in pace in the NBA, so it's a major bump to everybody in this offense. But Kelly O, he's not really going to be somebody who plays over 21, 22 minutes. But even in 17 minutes, we've seen some massive outputs. So sub 4K, I think he automatically vaults into play.
All right, so where else? And I don't know how tight you think this line is, how sharp you think this line is. If you think it's maybe even a little inefficient to where Detroit can get beat even bad. You mentioned the pacing and just how fast things are going to move. The scoring that we can anticipate from Charlotte, they do launch a lot as well. So that could easily place starters on the bench faster than we think for both sides. How else can you kind of attack Detroit if it's Cunningham, Grant, maybe you're looking even at Bay, knowing that, of course, we don't have that big slate either. So beggars may not be able to be many choosers tonight.
Yeah, I will say 10.5 is probably appropriate. I mean, Charlotte had lost 3 in a row before the break. The break happened, and then they just put their foot down on the throats of Toronto. Played phenomenally well, 125 and 90 to 93 there. Just kind of starting on the Detroit side of it, because we talked about Kelly Olynyk. I have a lot more interest, I think, than the field, 20%. Cade Cunningham, even at 7,100 over on DK, he's a lot more affordable. 6,300, he's a massive part of the slate for FanDuel, and I think he should be. You should get to a lot of him, but I think he's the guy that even in some of these blowouts might play some extended minutes. He only played 27 against Boston, but there was some major foul trouble that he ran into yesterday for it. And now you remove Marvin Bagley off the floor. He had 25.9% and 21.3% usage here in his back-to-back games here for Detroit off the bench. And that kind of, output, that shot output has got to go somewhere. And the main beneficiary is the guy who has the ball in his hand constantly. That's going to be Cade Cunningham here. He's over a 1.05 DraftKings points per minute player on the season, 7,100. I'm projecting him just a little north of 30 minutes. That's what we got him at Awesemo, 31 minutes right now. I think at shooting guard and small forward, that dual eligibility, I'm just going to get to him in a lot more lineups than 20%.
Yeah, I mean, looking at it overall, if you are spending up, Yahoo specifically is 29. So if you're finding a cheaper option, it makes total sense. I get it. There are 4 other games to choose from, but outside of Rozier, I mean, you're really just spending the same amount for a similar upside if you think that, especially how you laid out with Cunningham. So on the flip side here with Charlotte, we do have to worry about this team kind of pulling away. And we were targeting a little earlier in the year, Rozier, Ball to a lesser extent, these 3-point props, but just had to cool off because they were either getting their ass kicked or kicking somebody's ass. And it was just really tough with inconsistency. But just looking at it from this game and how long you think these guys will be on the floor, let's just start with Ball and Rozier. We can kind of work around.
Yeah, so starting on the Charlotte side, LaMelo Ball, I don't really know what to say about the guy. I play him over the field just about every slate, it feels like. He's a 1.35 DraftKings points per minute producer. That's pretty good. He rebounds the ball at a pretty darn decent clip for a guard, not to the extent of like a Luka Doncic coming up later on the slate, but you're also getting that price decrease for it. the assist rates sky high, everything you kind of want to see out of a point guard playing massive minutes. You get this Detroit team. It's not like in terms of pace, it's not the best, but I mean, Detroit is a terrible basketball team. And Charlotte is going to play up in pace, as I said, second in the NBA in that regard. Of course, that's factored into all the prices for the guys here for Charlotte. But starting at the top, LaMelo Ball is clear cut my favorite guy to get to from this team. And I don't think it's remotely close.
All right. So Miles Bridges is catching some decent ownership on our projections here. Ball is one of them right there at just at the same amount. So it's Ball and Bridges really are the two guys. And to a lesser extent, Oubre at 5,500 on DK, similar range, right? That 17 to 15% projection. It's a 5-game slate, so nobody's really dominating over that mid to high 30s anyway. So there is significant, I would say, compared to everybody else, enough to at least make a difference in maybe how you look at this from an ownership standpoint of those guys.
Yeah, here's what it comes down to with Charlotte. You have two guys that are just so secure in terms of what the minutes are going to be in LaMelo Ball and Miles Bridges and Terry Rozier. We'll put all three of those guys together. The rest of it is just difficult to really analyze. And I was going through a lot of the box scores even yesterday. JT Thor came up out of the middle of nowhere. And I know that Toronto game got really, really wonky, but a lot of people are probably going to look at that box score and see 24 minutes. Oh, it had to all have been in a blowout run, but that was not the case. He had two massive stints in the first half. He had an 8-minute stint that started at the end of the first, that went to the second, then came back out for PJ Washington, who started the quarter with him that second quarter. And then he nearly closed out the half. So that's just another wrench that gets thrown into this team. I don't expect him to be playing 20-ish minutes here going forward, but it at least has me a little bit shy on taking shots to too many other guys that aren't Ball, Bridges, and Rozier. I mean, Montrezl Harrell, I think now the ownership has started to come down. He's now sub 10% in our last run of ownership. At that kind of a number on FanDuel, 6,700, I think you can start to take some shots at power forward there. Over on DK, though, that center spot is so valuable. I find it hard for me to want to be falling on 6,100 Montrezl Harrell, but I guess sub 10%, you're fine trying to make that a thing. But PJ Washington, Kelly Oubre, I feel like these are just more volatile pieces, and the ownership started to come down from our earlier run. Those guys are at around 10 and 15%, but I think taking them off the board for me is going to be my approach.
Yeah, and that's the thing is there really only is a gap between 2% or so ownership projection between Ball and Bridges versus Oubre. So you can be even to the field even with Ball and Bridges and be so underweight to Oubre and still get some leverage overall because there's those three guys in that similar range. Yeah,
Kelly Oubre, I think on FanDuel's 5,100. I think he's going to fit into a lot more lineups for people playing over there. I think on DraftKings, though, specifically, where I'm playing a little bit more here tonight, 5,500 for him. He's had some crazy stocks games. He's had at least 2 stocks in his last 3 games, and that's really buoyed some massive performances. And going back to the beginning of February, he had like a 7 stock, a 2 stock game. Those have really kind of brought his price point up to like a top end 6K number. It's starting to come back down. It's at 5,500 now, but I still think there's a little bit of room for it to drop even further. I think there's some pace up spots for some teams later. We've got some value, with Jordan Poole, some of these other guys falling in that 5K range that I'm just a little bit more comfortable with. If you fell on Kelly Oubre on FanDuel, just fine with him. But on DraftKings, I think just taking an underweight approach in large field stuff just feels a little bit more appropriate.
Now, I have a much more narrow scope to work with here, but I took Oubre 4+3s plus 250.
What does that mean? You're like, I am stupider than I should be, but here we are.
No. Yeah. Because here's the thing. I can give a 3-point prop that makes a lot of sense because a guy could take 14 threes tonight, but he may not do enough from beyond just a scoring standpoint to justify him being out there. But to your point, yes, I do try to limit where I can be stupid because if I widen the gap, then I'm just 100% a moron. So I'm trying to limit it a little bit. But Oubre 4+3s plus 250. I don't need any more encouragement to being an idiot. Is my point.
Oh, okay,
Oubre
gotcha.
4+3s plus 250.
We're getting a little bit hairy with that one. And again, you're the king. Man. You're the king. You're the king of the over on 3-point props. Like you've been a gold mine. But I also think that you were early to a little James Harden narrative, which I think can help out in certain regards. hopefully we get to see that screenshot a little bit later for the people in chat.
You have a screenshot to brag about too, though.
So I took overs on that too, which is ironic because I think all I did today was just slam unders in the assist department throughout the board. If you go to Odd Shopper and look at the top end of the board, I think Reggie Jackson's a guy that I love for DFS purposes, even on DraftKings at his expensive price we'll talk about later. But I think there's some assist numbers across the industry that are just too high. 8.5 was the number on Luka. I'm not sure if that has changed since I bet that earlier, but I think there was a little overinflation going on across the industry today.
All right, let's hit this super chat real quick. DON's 89. We'll talk about everything as well. We'll go around this 5-game slate. We have plenty of time, but super chats always welcome. Definitely not necessary, but we appreciate it. DON's 89. Can't stay long. Joker, Barton, Ball, CJ, DK, GPP, EL.
Let's see. I mean, Joker, here's the thing about Joker today, not to hit the fast forward button, but you have so many cheap centers. You have so many guys. And so for me, I'm prioritizing some of the guards like Luka, LaMelo Ball. I'm over the field on every slate. I'm just a broken record on that regard, but I'm probably going Ball, CJ for DK, GPP, just between those two. And again, Joker is just an absolute smash, but you get both of those Denver guys. Maybe the game shoots out and you're maybe in a good spot playing them together, but I'm more inclined to go Ball and CJ.
Let's hit the Clippers. Reggie Jackson, you brought him up as far as Odd Shopper. He's catching a lot of ownership on DK, 24%, one of the top 5 guys projected, at least in our ownership projections across the board. So let's start with Reggie. You find yourself being overweight to that number, 24% on DK?
Yeah, I'm going to try
it. Even higher on FanDuel, sorry.
Yeah, I'm going to try to just kind of write off. Tyronn Lue does a lot of things from a coaching department. He is very active as far as an NBA coach goes. He benched towards the end of that Lakers game. He ended up benching Reggie Jackson towards the end of it for Terrence Mann. Terrence Mann and Robert Covington were +19 and +9 respectively. And just for the guys that he decided to ride towards the end of that game, I'm not going to read anything into that. If I had to pick one guy to play over 30 minutes a night from here on out for the Clippers, you have to pick Reggie Jackson. There's just not many guys playing the guard spot. They have Terrence Mann backing him up there. Amir Coffey and Luke Kennard come off the bench, but they're more shooting guard. They're not guys who play with the ball in their hands very often. So Reggie Jackson, in the month of February, since Powell and Bledsoe have left, with them off the floor, he's a 1.15 DraftKings points per minute player, and he's playing over 30 minutes a game. Just from a raw projection standpoint, that's going to be something that puts him in play, even at 7,600. And now the field has started to catch up. This is like my reverse Kuzma, where, Kuzma, I wasn't on the entire way up to his ridiculous tag that he's at now. And, I should have been. I've been there early on Reggie Jackson. And now it feels like the field is starting to catch up. He's around 25% here on the DraftKings slate. 7,600, I think there's a lot of paths for him to fail, but going up against Houston, a matchup that everybody can thrive in no matter what, it makes a lot of sense to be taking shots there. 30 plus minutes. I don't think that there's going to be any kind of a closing concern. They're only 6.5-point favorites, which is kind of surprising to me going into Houston, especially with Kevin Porter Jr. questionable here. And I have concerns that, if that turnover stuff, if he has 6 turnovers like he had against the Lakers, that he's somebody that could definitely get benched towards the end of that game. They play through Marcus Morris a little bit more, but I'm not going to overreact to one situation in one game. He's still played 33 minutes. So I think you can fire him up at will.
Yeah, I don't even think there's going to be. Now, look, you mentioned the field is caught up. And last I checked, like I said, 24% on DK, a little higher on FanDuel. I don't think that number is going to drastically go up to where it's going to change my statement here, Eric. But
KPJ ruled out as we're talking about it. That's
there
beautiful. From the news god himself.
Better.
Dennis Schroeder starting. All right. So there you go. There's a guard spot I like a lot. Oh,
there you go too. The fact that if you got that in at 6, by the way, even better, because I imagine that might move a half, maybe even a full, depending on how the money comes in. But point being is that this is not going to change any different with Reggie Jackson. Doesn't seem like there's going to be a number, but my point being that's going to get too high to where you're going to have to use that as a deterrent and maybe start to fade. But we do have a bunch of guys who are all kind of grouped together. Everybody else basically beyond Reggie Jackson.
Yeah.
And they're all basically at the same, right? 15, 14% here. It's Zubats, Kennard, Mann, and Batum. That what would you call them? Not a threesome, but a quad. A quattro. Thank you. Quad, I was going to say quad, but I think quattro sounds. Isn't quattro a car though?
It is. It's an Audi. It's an Audi. Again, I'm the foul guy. I don't want to. Jordan Klein's laughing over there. I can see him.
What's the foul guy meaning? Like chicken?
Because so in the Midwest, we say foul instead of foul because it's just a foul, but it sounds like I'm making it a 2-syllable thing. Yeah, yes. It's not ideal. Quartet. There we are. See, that's lovely. That's symphonic, if you will.
Well, that's what I was looking for. Something that made sense, not something like just rigid, like a quad. That's awful. All right, here we go. So
Quattro is a car you want.
That Quattro. Yeah, Quattro, not Quattro, Quartet.
All right, so there's a lot. There's a lot to discuss here with the Clippers. Obviously, we talked about Reggie Jackson. I think because he's the most popular play, that makes sense to start there. But I'm looking at the rest of this situation. Marcus Morris tag his dropped $400 over on DraftKings from where it was against the Lakers. And now you're basically getting a discount against a Houston team that right before the break, they played them the last game. In just 25 minutes, he put up 27 real points, 40 DraftKings points. And that's going to happen a lot against Houston. You know, we talked about Charlotte there being number 2 in pace, number 1 in pace this season in the NBA, the Houston Rockets. So this is a great spot to upgrade and take a lot of shots on Clippers. Plus, it's a game script. We talk about it being a 6.5 point spread here. There's a lot of ways that this game goes sideways here for Houston with KPJ out, especially. Not that he's somebody that I factor in to be so impactful that you would need to move that line a point or two. But I definitely can see a lot of ways that Houston just gets ran out of the gym here in this game. I think a lot of other people could too. So not just the starters in Reggie Jackson, Marcus Morris, Zubac, whose minutes can be volatile from time to time. He ended up in foul trouble early, had 3 fouls going up against Dwight Howard in just a revelatory Dwight Howard spot on Friday. He's just fine to be going back to as well. But then you have all of these bench guys, Luke Kennard, Terrence Mann's in the starting unit now, of course. Isaiah Hartenstein, he's somebody that I think is more than viable because anytime he's on the floor, he's nearly a 1.2 DraftKings points per minute play. So for me, really kind of identify who the guys that you really want to have. I think this is going to be one of the main groups that I make is just making sure I don't get any Hartenstein and Zubac together because I think that they are very game script dependent. I think Zubac plays the majority of minutes if it stays close, and that's kind of the guy I will be preferring. But Hartenstein, if this game goes sideways, there are just a lot of spots where he could just go nuts in limited minutes here, has proven to be capable of doing that with 32 and 40 fantasy points his last 2 in under 30 minutes. So I think this is a team that you're going to get to like 2 or 3 of these guys in a lot of lineups, and I'm just fine mixing and matching them.
So we do have Dwight Howard, I know, on the slate at 3K, and he's right there at the top. And we mentioned Joker as well. How often do you find yourself pivoting to a guy like this in the middle at Zubac at 5,100 on DK, where you could clearly save a shit ton of money going right down to the bottom at Howard, but also pick up, anywhere from 38 to 40% of the field ownership?
Yeah, maybe you should have talked a little bit about Isaiah Stewart. That's a guy I have some interest in going up against Charlotte. That front court, Mason Plumlee, Montrezl Harrell, there's no defensive presence that exists there. So you have Isaiah Stewart. And then super cheapies. Dwight Howard is the most popular player on the slate, rightfully so. You have Drew Eubanks from Portland, which can be a volatile piece of chalk, but somebody that can absolutely smash if he can be north of his 1 fantasy point per minute player that we kind of assume him to be, even in this acquisition here with Portland. A lot of cheap centers, guys who are cheaper than Zubac. And then, I talked about kind of my concerns on landing in that mid-range of center, 6,100 Montrezl Harrell. Like there's just a drastic opportunity cost. And then you have Jokic at the top end. So there's a target-rich environment at center. And you really got to take your shots and be sensitive to what that roster shift's going to be. But Zubac was around 20%. He's dropped to around 15%. I think people are going to be jamming Dwight Howard a lot more than what we expect them to be. And Zubac against a Houston front court that now consists almost exclusively of Christian Wood, KJ Martin, Şengün. There's a massive upside here for Zubac. So if he's going to be sub 15, 20%, I think that's definitely a guy to prioritize.
All right, so we expect this to change with the Porter Jr. news clearly. Schroeder starting looks like that, 5,100 on the other side. So let's start with him on Houston.
Yeah, we haven't updated anything. I'm kind of updating my stuff here as we go, but you just have to look at his 2 starts previously, 39 and 30. Eric Gordon was not active in those 2, so I want everybody to keep that in mind, that Eric Gordon is going to actually cut into some of what Dennis Schroeder does to a certain extent. So I don't want to say that he's some all-in play here, the way that he was when he was 4,400 and 4,500 in those Phoenix and Clippers matchups, where I found him to be just unavoidable to jam in every lineup. 5,100 going up against a Clippers team. There's definitely paths for Dennis Schroeder to fail, but he definitely vaults to the top of the board as the guy that you want to get to the absolute most. Now, Eric Gordon's $4,200, and he was already picking up some ownership. This team was not very intriguing to get to whatsoever if Kevin Porter Jr. was going to play, but now you have Eric Gordon, somebody that can definitely get there in just a shooting volume standpoint. Did play 30 minutes. This is just such a surprising thing to see that Houston is doing instead of developing Jalen Green or taking their shots with Shane Goon to just develop these guys, play Wood limited minutes. They're just playing Eric Gordon 30 minutes. So I don't understand that whatsoever, but 4,200 mitigates any kind of risk you might have for him having a bad game as well. I just think he's somebody else to be targeting. Now with KPJ off the floor as well, there's one really deep flyer and somebody that I don't really, I know he's not going to start, but Garrison Matthews is somebody that can come in sub 4K, 3,700. We had him projected around 22 minutes, but figuring out like who's going to get a majority of these minutes. We already had Schroeder projected around 25. I'm going to put him north of 30 minutes here now. He did play 30 and 39. I think that 30, 31 is about the appropriate baseline for that. I think Garrison Matthews is actually in play. Plus, you get him at a small forward position. That's a little bit more intriguing than having a cheap piece at center, because we know that we're going to be using that up a lot. We're going to want to pay up for Doncic and Jokic. So Garrison Matthews, a low-owned flyer that I think probably benefits coming off the bench for this team. Not a good fantasy point per minute guy, but I'm going to get to a little bit.
All right, so we'll keep things moving here and head to Golden State, Dallas in a sec. Just a reminder of what's going on with Yahoo as well. Hit the thumbs up button, please. If you haven't already, make sure you're subscribed. What's happening here, this channel, the Odd Shopper channel. And we have those two links below for you for Yahoo. We'll give you $10. Just click that first one, $10, click on it, use it however you want. And then if you're new to Yahoo, then click that second one. You'll get 1 free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. All you need to do is just sign up. First time deposit, paid contest entry, you're good to go. So we'll look at, real quick, and I got to give a shout out to our own Nick the Picker, because I did his video earlier today, and it makes a lot of sense when you were talking about just the ultimate amount of attention you wanted to spend on Reggie Jackson. But over 7.5 assists is still plus money at plus 110, by the way.
Oh man, I like the under there. That was kind of one of the things we had him projected just short of 6. I think there's aggressive stances you can take. For me, there's a lot of paths to blowout here with KPJ off the floor. It would be a stay away or an under for me. I understand if you're getting plus money, you can kind of talk yourselves into a lot of things. Reggie Jackson, I've just been very, very bullish on, but never been a phenomenal distributor. Even with PG-13 out for a lot of this year, he's averaging less than 5 assists per game. So 7.5 is a hefty number.
He's at 7.5 this month. Just to let you know.
I'm aware. I'm saying, right. but I'm saying that
You're
if you
aware,
give me plus 105,
Eytan.
Come on now. You
can't pull a Jack McCoy on me. I'm aware.
I'm just saying that it's okay. So if you want to get into a coin flip war, we can do that. But I'm more interested in finding some spots where we can really isolate. And there's a drastic difference now. With no KPJ, I think that there's more blowout concern at the same time that there could be. So there's narratives you can kind of draw for both. I'm personally not going to draw those conclusions because I don't think he matters from a real basketball perspective. He can be a fantasy asset, but I don't think that line should change very much.
So let's hit Dallas, and we'll start on the road here. Tight favorite. Seen a lot of love for the Mavs to cover this line. It's dipped a little bit depending on where you're betting. Don't hate them, especially no Clay's out. We have to deal with some injury thing on the other side with the Warriors, but I don't hate Dallas winning this game, to be honest with you, at Golden State. I know it is a tight line, so maybe there's some trap element to it, but the Mavs at least not dealing with anything at the top that we don't know about already. So let's just look at the 5-game slate kind of with Luka in comparison to everybody else, knowing that this is a top spend up option.
Yeah, this is I think your top spend up that you're going for on this slate. The center position, we have Dwight Howard. we did get news Justice Winslow's out. I'm adjusting some stuff to Portland before we get to talking about them. I know the guys behind the scenes are updating that here as well. So looking forward to talking about that because we have even more value that I think showed up here on the slate. But right now, a majority of it sits at the center position with Dwight Howard, with guys like that. And by default, that's going to hurt Jokic in terms of how many lineups you can get to him in. Because of Stewart, Eubanks, Howard, all of these guys that we might be prioritizing a little bit more for some cheapies. But it's at guard, it's Luka. It's clear cut for me to get up to Luka as much as possible. At the guard position, he projects out for 10 more fantasy points than Steph Curry here at Awesemo, nearly 15 more than LaMelo Ball. As much as I love LaMelo Ball, we should have the money with as much value as there is to get up to Luka. He's around a 1.6 DraftKings points per minute player on the season, but in the month of February, that is vaulted up to 1.75. Now, I understand that Kristaps Porzingis is not there. And regardless of how we want to talk about the fit there, there's no doubt that I think there's some assist opportunities that might go by the wayside. But you know what that means? More shot attempts for Luka. So I think he's going to continually find ways to get there in every element. He's, averaging nearly a triple-double, 9 and 9 here in the rebounds and assist category. I don't know what else you want from a spend up. He's, for me, the clear-cut guy to get to.
So real quick, because I know we'll bounce around the Mavs, but it doesn't mitigate anything with Steph that if you were going to spend up, you don't have Clay out there as well to kind of bump up some usage for Curry.
Say that one more time.
I know you were basically, which one were you responding to here?
You'll see. We're getting it in. Hi, Don Barnes. How are you? Fine afternoon.
You either have to tune up your attention span or you need to be a faster typer.
I'm a super fast typer. I have the ninja skills. I mean, do you want to have like a speed typing type off or something? Again, we are doing a dick measuring contest for sure.
No, wait a second. My typing skills aren't in question. I'm not ever caught. Hold on a second here. When I go to the next game, before we go to the next game, let me go out there.
At least I didn't try to bullshit it and say that I wasn't listening. I was legitimately not listening to anything you said for the end of
You
that.
will never bullshit. You are an honest man, and I love you for it.
You're just saying that's what it is. To a fault. Maybe I should have found a way to bullshit there and, pulled a complete Adam Scher. I'm in Adam Scher's chair today. I got to be able to pull it off better than that. Oh, there we go.
Wait a second. The question was as far as the big pay up option with Luka, right?
Yes.
And comparing it to somebody like Steph, whose value may be bumped up because Clay's out, and that may increase his usage because it's not just going to be pouring on Andrew Wiggins.
It's so hard because Steph Curry is a guy that when he wants to just chuck and when he gets in the zone, we all saw the All-Star game. We're aware of what he's capable of doing in any spot. It's just so difficult because Steph Curry still benefits from the assists that he gets to Klay Thompson. 14 assists in 27 minutes against Portland. That's the kind of stuff that you can benefit from. The only thing that's shared in basketball is the assist to bucket between two players. Everything else is individualized. Points, blocks, steals, rebounds, everything can be correlated because of pace. But for the most part, Steph Curry losing Klay Thompson, allows for Dallas and just to speak of what this game environment is like, Dallas plays at the slowest pace of any team in the NBA. And Golden State on the other side is the number one defensive rating team in the NBA. So something's got to give here where if you're going to get there from a fantasy perspective outside of Luka and Steph, you're going to just kind of hope for some other things to happen. But Klay Thompson being out opens up Jordan Poole. Steph Curry is going to benefit just in terms of more shot attempts, but he definitely loses a little bit of luster in terms of the kind of creation that he can do when he has Klay Thompson on the floor. So I think there's a little bit of push and pull with his absence. For sure, more shot attempts can be there for him. Previous to Klay, he's only had one game where he's attempted more than 20 shot attempts now since the beginning of the month. So that is going to be the Klay Thompson effect, is there's going to be more shots for Steph. So does he have a higher ceiling? Sure. But Luka does everything on a basketball floor, whereas Steph, the rebounds, he's getting 4 less rebounds a game, 3.5, 4 assists less a game than Luka is. It's just, they're not in the same stratosphere in terms of what their raw projection is going to be, even though Steph Curry, there's no question he has a ceiling.
All right. So let's move past Luka here on that Dallas side, right? And we'll come back to it if it's Dinwiddie, if it's, what we're looking at here with Brunson, anybody else, knowing, of course, that there are some things you mentioned on the Golden State side that they're dealing with, where can we kind of exploit that a little bit more, maybe find some value on a cheaper element here with Dallas?
Yeah, it's going to be crazy for Luka Doncic to just try to create any of these other guys. They're trying to surround him with some shooters. I mean, Davis Bertans had the best shooting game he's had in forever, 5 for 8 from 3 against Utah here after the break. That came out of nowhere. Maybe they were having him run wind sprints for a week during the All-Star break to get him in shape, because he's had a brutal run of it the last 2 years since he got paid the bag in Washington. But if he's going to be knocking down shots, maybe he's somebody that can open up some assist opportunities, but that certainly does not make Bertans viable for me from a fantasy aspect. There's too many guys in this $3,700 range or sub 4K range, and they're all going to project out so much better than Bertans. And even that 27 fantasy point game, when you talk about the center spots, I mean, there's going to be a number of those guys that have the opportunity to get to 25, 36 fantasy points without having to go 5 for 8 from 3. So I'm looking to get away from just about everything else here on the Dallas team. If you want to try to make Jalen Brunson a thing, always on FanDuel, it seems ownership. There's no ownership, but on FanDuel, he's always criminally underpriced. He's 6,100. The tag's starting to come down a little bit more, even from where it was 6,400, 6,500. Luka's been taking over so much of this usage. Spencer Dinwiddie's going to cut into Jalen Brunson a lot more than he's going to cut into Luka. So I think it makes sense. So at 6,100, FanDuel would be the spot to go take some shots on Jalen Brunson. But outside of Luka, there is legitimately nothing to get to from Dallas.
Yeah, but does it make more sense just to go to Poole at a cheaper price? And we could transition if you want to the Warriors, right? Wouldn't it make more sense to go to, you're saving money a little bit, 23 on Yahoo for Brunson, 19 on Poole. It's going to be comparative to that on the other sites as well. So why not just go to Poole and take advantage of his increased usage?
Yeah, I'm with you. I think Jordan Poole is a fantastic play, and so does the field. He's at 22% right now. Gary Payton, he's been serviceable there starting, but the minutes, I mean, he played 25 and 19. Maybe they were bubble wrapping him towards the end of that Portland game. They pretty much only had the starters out there for 3 quarters. It got really lopsided, but Jordan Poole, clear-cut 5K, somebody to get to from a value perspective. I think we have to start comparing him now to some of these Portland pieces as well. He's at least cheaper than the likes of an Anthony Simons, a Josh Hart. And then he's a little bit more expensive than the likes of Ellaby and McLemore. There's just so many guys from Portland. It's going to be hard to really figure out exactly where to go in that department. Whereas Jordan Poole, you're getting mid-20s minutes to upper 30s minutes here, especially in the absence of Clay. He's going to go out there and chuck. He's going to be active, defensively and have some opportunities, get some stocks. So I'm fine going to Jordan Poole. I think that he's one of the higher owned pieces of value, and for good reason.
Wiggins is catching ownership. Now, I get it. Steph's going to be a high price, and that's why for a lot of it, when you look at other high price options that we've talked about so far on the slate, makes sense, especially from a Luka standpoint. So I get it there. But from a Wiggins standpoint, he is catching, mid-teen ownership projections from what we had last I ran with it. The expected amount of volume should be up there, but I don't even know if it's worth taking a risk, even at like a 5,800 on DK.
I think it's probably worth it. 5,800, getting
That's
to a
cheap.
little bit. I'm not going to X him out of the player pool here, but I mean, we're talking about the absence of Clay. And if you look at the box score and see some of these games where Clay's been alongside of him, putting up sub 30-point fantasy outings, he's really not adding anything else in the fantasy category. You're hoping he goes out, gets hot, puts up 30 real points against Dallas. Now, they play at the slowest pace Dallas does, so it's not a great matchup in terms of fantasy points. You have, Golden State themselves that they're going to be kind of packing it in defensively, trying to stop Luka, and Andrew Wiggins is going to be a big part of that, you would assume. So I find it tough to go nuts with him, but 5,800 is a low number to be looking at for him, and can get hot in any of these situations. I think 5,600 over on FanDuel is an even better spot to try to take some of those stands, but you're right. It's just going to be a hard one to land on what's turned out to be more of a stars and scrubs slate than I expected.
Now, I got in on this earlier, and it was 220. The Thompson news became official. It dipped, and now it's below, I think, around 190 or so. But 3+3s at the time was 220 for Wiggins, with the anticipation that there would be no Thompson. I think that's pretty good.
Yeah,
3 plus 220. Yeah. I'll take it.
Yeah, and plus, this is the game that you kind of want to be watching, man. Luka versus Steph. This is going to be appointment viewing this afternoon. So if you're going to be watching that, plus 220, that's definitely a pretty decent number. I don't completely hate that one the way that I might other ones that you throw my way.
Well, look, I'm also 30 points ahead of the closing line. Other points like you see Jordan's on the chat, by the way.
No, I didn't, because I'm trying to not look at chat anymore because I have a job to do. And
wait a second,
you're a dick. So
let me just say
don't be
this.
A dick.
Hold on a second. Let me just say this. To be fair, right? As much as I apparently am an asshole because of what I said to you, calling you out on something that I thought was pretty funny, you are right now doing three things. You're not doing two things. You're doing three things actually pretty well. You're doing this show. You're typing at whoever is either trolling you or praising you, one or the other, one of the extremes on the chat.
No, it was actually pretty neutral. I'm not even gonna lie. It was like a neutral comment. I liked it.
Well, the third thing is that you're carrying a possible winner right now at the Hondas. So this is pretty impressive that you have yet to show any emotion at all about that. So I'm going to give you some props
Plus
and try to balance it back.
Shane Lowry. Oh, it's a good time. I tell you what, if you guys are in a legal state and you aren't doing this every day, you're doing it wrong, because there is money to be had in the streets. It is. I'm moving to Arizona. We'll see if my wife and dog like that idea. Probably not.
Yep. I love it, man. I love it. All right. So anything else on the Warriors before we hit the Hall of Fame?
Quick shout out for Jonathan Kuminga. I don't know how much rostership he's going to really be getting here. He played some of the blowout run. That entire game against Portland, it's hard to go crazy factoring in some of that. I saw somebody in the chat, props to you, as far as the foul trouble. Gary Payton II. I watched almost that entire Portland game because I was very invested in it from a fantasy perspective and played Showdown that night. It got wonky. Gary Payton was like complaining to the ref the entire time. He had some tic-tac foul calls on him there, but Gary Payton's another guy to also be firing up. In the absence of Klay Thompson, they'll just kind of figure out which of the guys is getting hot there. Otto Porter. I'm just more inclined to take shots on Gary Payton just because I know, more than likely he's in that starting unit going forward. And that's what they said they were going to do. And now Jordan Poole, he's going to be the popular piece. And again, 5K, more active in a shooting department, averaging north of 16 per game. But Andrew Wiggins, less enticing because of the tag, whereas Jonathan Kuminga, 4,700, can find ways to get there in so many different ways. A pretty darn good rebounding. We'll call him power forward, I suppose, because that's what he's listed at, even though he's basically a 3. I like Jonathan Kuminga's game here. First round pick. He's been really, really impressive to me from a real life basketball perspective. And the fantasy numbers are starting to come along. He's a 0.95 DraftKings points per minute guy on the season. So don't sleep on him. 4,700, somebody that in tournaments, I'm all right being a little bit north of that 10% number on DraftKings.
All right, brother. So this is something that you wanted to do so you could brag about your game winner here.
That is not don't do that to me. Come on, man. Come on. You both of us smashed. Why do you got to be a dick to me today? What did I do?
I'm just playing, man.
I know. Yeah, people don't understand. I go on your radio show quite a bit. We are friendly. We are friendly
every week.
Beings. But
yes, I'm surprised you haven't invoiced me off yet.
Yeah, I know.
I don't know why.
Right, Philly, because you got nice things in Philly, and I don't like Philly. So
I know, and I'm wearing the hat to rub it in.
Yes, Mike Lawrence over there.
Oh my goodness! All right, download the Awesemo profile pic at awesemo.com/avatar. Tweet your wins at Awesemo HOF, and then you can win a free month of Awesemo Plus Platinum. You do the work. You make sure you definitely have that avatar working. Tweet us, and then we're going to reward you. That's the whole thing right here. And no, to Eric's point, both of us had a nice little hit there. It made its way in. So we're happy. And look, you just keep firing, right? You never get too high, never get too low. But it is nice to celebrate all of you out there who have knocked off some pretty high plays. And look at this, man. Eric Lindquist, 4 picks to pay 2,500. My goodness.
Let's go.
Yeah.
You know what? Sometimes you get the bear, and sometimes the bear gets you. It's nice to beat the bear. It's nice to beat the bear. Yeah.
And look at that. I mean, McCollum over points, just straight points too. You don't even mess around. That's like Val Kilmer.
As soon as Aaron Holiday got ruled out on a back-to-back against the Pels, it just made all the sense in the world. Plus, McCollum, if you see him projected under 25 points anywhere ever, it's just wrong. He's been under projected for, it feels like weeks now.
Right. I agree. And you took advantage of it. You found value. You jumped in. You took advantage of it. You hit all the right people on Twitter. Look at that.
Yep. But look, it gets better. Look at this guy, Eytan Shander. Look at you. What an absolute jerk face against my Timberwolves. James Harden goes completely berserk, And you just smashed the overs. I do love this because I was way over on James Harden that first game. I thought he was going to be a great fit. And 14 assists is what he ended up with, 12 or 14 that first one out. He had 10 at halftime today against the Knicks. It's another stratosphere here. So, hey, look at us. The betting streets have been kind.
And it was the same today. Now, look, Tobias Harris, we got lucky at the end. He went over his 1.5 on a miracle. But for the most part, I think Harden's numbers for the second straight game were a little soft, especially because these were plus money. Now, all of this, like, I didn't have to go crazy on their numbers. I just went over because they were all plus money. These were pre-Harden numbers. Tobias Harris was like plus 180 to go over 1.5 that game. Tyrese Maxey was in the plus range. Embiid was in the plus range because that team never took many threes. That's why I never brought a sixer up. You notice that, right? Mm-hmm. And when we do these 3-point props, never brought up any sixer because they don't take threes. But in this case, Harden comes. So something to think about out there from if you're betting these type of props, assists, scoring, and threes, today you got a plus return, Eric, on over 2.5 threes for Harden. So they're soft.
Well, congrats.
Man. The books
congrats, my guy.
Yeah, congrats.
It's beautiful.
Congrats. Now we have other people to celebrate here.
Right,
oh,
look
Jordan?
at this guy.
This can't be.
Good Lord. It's an ultimate trump card. Adam Scherer, come on now.
You know what? I think Jordan trolled us from the beginning to set us up so that we could brag about our wins. So
look at your cute little bets
card.
while Adam comes in and just lays the hammer down in the ticket department. Congratulations to our guy Ship. One of the nicest guys you will ever meet. That is not. That's a lie. I'm lying. He's an okay person, but he's really fun on Twitter. Go follow him there.
That's a hell of a smash by Adam, by all means.
Beautiful.
So any way you want to slice it. Do we have anybody else that doesn't work here that we can celebrate?
We do.
About that?
Look at this. Snot Knocker 22. I love that. That's a great moniker. Great name.
That's a big pull, man. Congrats. 500 Thursday NBA dime.
10 cents to win $80. That's fun.
Beautiful, isn't it? Those are the best, absolute best right there. All right. Good stuff. You see, we keep it rolling here. I just want to make sure that we can celebrate with everyone out there. And Jeff is another one, right?
Yeah.
Blick KJS.
Yeah, I was going to say the Mookie 99G as well to round it out. Hockey Streets were kind to a lot of subs during the All-Star break. So congratulations to everybody who had big hits over there, especially Mook over there.
All right, brother, let's move to Denver, and we can start at least with our own projections. You know, Jokic, we talked about him earlier, the super chat, as far as looking at him in this game. Barton was kind of alongside, but let's just look at Jokic himself. We talked about pay-up option being Luka, so I don't know if it's one or the other. We do have, other things to talk about in that later game as well, but are you trying to get to both of those guys? Is this a one or the other type scenario for you more often than not?
It's hard to say because you get 2 center spots. You can play 2 centers on DraftKings. So it's not like I'm not going to be over the field on 21% Jokic here. The numbers started to come up a little bit. I think some more value is starting to show up. Even it can be a little hairy down there to try to make both of them work. But because of Drew Eubanks' existence at center now, especially a little bit more secure, not having Justice Winslow out there, a pretty decent rebounding wing. I feel pretty confident that that's a guy I also want to prioritize, as well as Dwight Howard in the late night hammers. So Jokic by default is a guy that I'm getting to less than Luka just because of his position. But if you wanted to try to make a 12-6 Jokic work, there's no doubt that the guy is incredible. And from a raw projection standpoint, he surpasses Luka, almost 5 fantasy points more. So I'm looking at Nikola Jokic as a guy that he's more of a luxury item on this slate. I'm fine getting to a little bit, but I'm still thinking that Luka's the guy that you just want to be prioritizing because getting to a point guard at the top end makes a lot more sense.
All right. So beyond that, then it's kind of maneuverability here with Denver and other guys that you might try and slide in if it's countering the field, if it's going over, like Aaron Gordon is not getting much ownership at all, just around 10%. So I don't know if they're at 5,900 clearly on DK, you can multi-roster him, but the reality is that if you're looking at Jokic kind of as that luxury, maybe not getting to him as much because of that, there may not be as much here in the game overall that's appealing for Denver, at least.
Yeah, it's a decent enough spot going into Portland that should keep it pretty much in check, but This is a 5-game slate where a lot of the value is really clear cut. Especially now. Jordan Poole was never going to go anywhere. He was always going to make some sense. We've got these Dwight Howard, Drew Eubanks cheapies to go to in the late night, but every single one of these guys, Aaron Gordon was a major part of lineups the other night and didn't really have to do all that much just because of his positionality, small forward, power forward. I think falling on some of those guys makes some sense. Will Barton shooting guard only. You obviously don't have any spend ups in that kind of a position. Can Will Barton put up over 40? Absolutely. But these are guys that just kind of fall into lineups for me. None of them average north of a fantasy point per minute outside of our boy Boogie down there at 3K. Now, I don't expect 14 minutes for him going forward. That felt like something where going into Sacramento, they were like, all right, big boy, go eat quick and come back. Because he's got a little checkered history there in old Sacramento, but I think looking at the rest of this Denver team, it's a pretty quick move along spot. If you fall into some Monty Morris, Aaron Gordon, and Will Barton, so be it, but not a single one of them are going to be guys that you want to prioritize.
Do you want to answer the super chat before I have to sneeze again?
Dude, Jordan Klein's the worst too. You guys are both just awful people. Like, I'm supposed to be somebody that you build up to showcase our product, to be able to be like, look at Awesemo.com and the great knowledge
we are investing the Hall of Fame. Wait a second. We just ran the Hall of Fame. You turned like 10 cents into $2,500.
Yeah, right? Jordan Klein ruined it. Jordan Klein ruined all the good vibes. You know what you could do with that $2,500, Jordan Klein? You could dance for it, baby. You can dance for it now. Jerk.
Oh my goodness. I thought I had to sneeze again. That's why I thought it was a perfect segue. You could answer the super chat. I could go off camera, sneeze. It was, teamwork here. All right.
Manscaped.com. There you go. There's a better that'll be one, less hairy down there.
Well, wait a second. There. We don't have any affiliation with them, right?
No, none.
Oh, okay.
They don't
There's
like
a better one. Next time I'm on with you, I'll bring it out. There's a better one. Trust me. So let's look at this from
nothing like a quick trimmer plug from bro to bro to really derail a show. Oh man.
I was just about to bring it back. Anthony Simons, 8,200.
Hey, yeah, you want to borrow my trimmer? Yeah, it sounds great. Yeah. I'll ship it to you.
You want to borrow my trimmer? Anthony Simons, 8,200, the prop god. Let's talk about it.
All right. The prop god. Where are we even going to next? We're just talking Portland. Are we talking Portland?
What are we Simons.
Doing? I love Simons. Yeah, Anthony Simons is just, he's a willing participant in the shooting department. There's a lot more upside than 8,200. Okay. Like, if you were going to fall into some lineups where you had Anthony Simons instead of LaMelo Ball, I wouldn't completely call you crazy. And that would have been a foreign concept before. You take Justice Winslow off the floor here, and Anthony Simons, if this game stays competitive, which is an if, they're 8-point dogs here in Portland. Portland is not a very good basketball team on the whole, but he's going to be playing mid-30s, high 30s minutes here from now until the end of the season, and he can go out and just rip it from three. We have 4, 5, 7, 6, 5 makes in his last 5 games. These are the kind of things that on DraftKings where you get that little bonus, half-point bonus for threes. I think it makes a lot of sense to get to some in tournaments. He is not projecting out well whatsoever. This is not a great spot going up against Denver at home, but I don't really care with Anthony Simons. He's got that 45, 50 point ceiling, and in 8,200 number, I think he's somebody that you should definitely be getting to some shares of.
Yeah, the only thing I think you worry about, and look, from a betting standpoint, we've talked about him on multiple different platforms on this channel. His value has been sucked up faster than a vacuum. So not even trying to push that narrative by any means, but anytime you take on a better team, and I know that it's more often than not for Portland, you worry about the blowout factor. So it's just how fast this thing can get out of hand for Simons. He's not going to be out there for 38 minutes if they're getting the shit kicked out of him. But at the same time, you're right, where you're just guaranteed the built-in go-to de facto guy.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a balance.
Yeah, and Josh Hart, we haven't seen him a lot here in Portland. Okay. These guys are both going to be very large parts of the FanDuel slate. Josh Hart specifically is pulling north of 30% now. I've been saying this for years, and I truly still believe it. Josh Hart's one of the best rebounding threes or shooting guards that you're going to ever find in the NBA. He's averaging 7.5 here on the season. And I think in Portland, when you get Justice Winslow off the floor, we don't have a large enough sample size to really get anything from it, but he's a true double-double threat here in this spot. And I think that looking on DraftKings, there's definitely some functionality to that. And on FanDuel, because of a $6,900 tag, there's a lot of functionality there too. So Josh Hart, another guy that's just kind of locked into more minutes. And on DraftKings, once again, him and Anthony Simons are not going to project out well whatsoever, but mid-30s minutes, if they get hot, if they have an opportunity to really kind of, for Simons, just get hot from three and, get to that high 40s number that we've seen him get to 3 of the last 4. And Josh Hart, if he gets that double-double bonus, you could be looking at some surprise tournament winning upside here. They're both, I want to see them lower than 20% here still. If we start getting word that a lot of people are going to be relying on them, they are not cheap. 7,500 and 8,200 is not cheap. They still want to give looks to guys like Ellaby. Greg Brown is now in the rotation. Trenton Watford can play some 4. There's some weird rotations that could end up happening, but Simons is pretty secure. Josh Hart, I think, is the new acquisition, pretty secure as well.
All right. So last game here, unless there's anybody else. Watford, you mentioned a couple of guys at the bottom, or are you ready to move on?
I'm all set. I mean, if you wanted to go to Drew Eubanks, this is the guy that I think is my main target. FanDuel 4,100 at power forward here. That is really, really intriguing. And then sub 4K. He's not a pivot off of Dwight Howard. Nobody's really going to be a pivot off of him, but in any times that we had seen him in San Antonio where he played north of 20 minutes, he had tournament viability like in that 3K number. Now, 3,900 is a little bit different. And coming off of 21 minutes, 6.3% usage, all of this is really uninspiring. But without Justice Winslow out there, him and Josh Hart, they're going to be the main 2 rebounders in this spot for Portland. And I think Drew Eubanks, maybe a little bit more upside than what people are thinking for him. 16.5% of the field is already there. I think that's about appropriate, but I'd be looking at maybe trying to get to a little bit more of that as well.
Real quick, before we hit that final game, just to follow up on that, because we talked about a bunch of other guys kind of in that range there, and specifically if it's, Zubats and Isaiah Stewart, do you find yourself getting to Eubanks more than those guys?
See, it's really hard. So Zubats I'm kind of a mark for. He's a little bit more expensive. It's really going to come down to seeing what kind of studs I'm able to get, because like LaMelo Ball, Luka, those are my 2 main priorities. Jokic exists at the position as well. I said I'm going to try to get a little bit over the field, but you can't play everybody on this slate. But if I'm going more towards the stars and scrubs, you are able to play the 2 centers here on TK. If I had to rank the guys, I mean, Dwight Howard for me is number 1 clear cut. I don't think it's remotely close as far as the center, but the field's already there. So in tournaments, one of the main things you do is you just find a guy that's similar to the range. Now, 3K is a lot different than 3,900. And Drew Eubanks, I'm seeing people in chat, ew, yuck. I totally get it. He is a uncomfortable person to roster on this slate, but that's why you do it. And he's 1/3, is less than half of the rostership of Dwight Howard. And I think there's definitely some viability to kind of discussing that. Dwight Howard, we got to make sure that he's in that starting lineup. I'm assuming he's going to be going forward, absent Anthony Davis, but he's definitely not a piece to get away from. But in addition to having some Drew Eubanks makes sense.
All right, let's hit the final game here. And again, hit that thumbs up button, please, if you haven't already. Don't worry, Eric and we get along off the air. We may not on the air for some reason, but we definitely do off the air.
Yeah,
Jordan can attest to that.
Josh and Adam actually like each other, though. No, I promise you, Eytan and I like each other. But the thing is, sometimes, he's calling me out. I'm calling him out. We keep each other accountable.
Have to be.
Even though he's
Absolutely.
an asshole. That's what it is.
Well, but I don't deny that, right? We don't fight over that.
No, it's honestly, it's a bonding thing. We come to a common ground on you being mean to me, like most people.
Yes. Yeah, well, that's true.
Jordan Klein, no, head out of the gutter, dude. What is wrong with you?
Yeah, well, look. All right, let's end this thing here. Pelicans at the Lakers. McCollum is catching a lot, especially on Yahoo. He is 3rd highest. He's at basically 35% projected ownership. So we can start with McCollum. Hayes is catching a lot on Yahoo as well, but back on DK, it's McCollum and Ingram.
Yeah, on Yahoo, CJ McCollum now listed at point guard. That's kind of fun. It's actually not fun because you have Luka and LaMelo there, and I've already talked about how much I like them. $32, though, is a nice number, and you can play up to 3 point guards. You have strict positionality over on the old yahoo.com. It's going to be a really fun build over there, but on DraftKings, a little bit less of a priority for me. It's just, he's somebody that I think is going to be in a lot of lineups because I like him at 89. Like 8,900 is not a good number to be getting CJ McCollum. I'll still get to him in a few lineups here, but Brandon Ingram, I know he's not projecting out phenomenally well for us, but between the two, you're now getting an $1,100 discount going to Brandon Ingram and CJ McCollum. Maybe he's kind of been the alpha, but it's been more of a 1A, 1B thing since his arrival there. Brandon Ingram is going to have some ceiling games going forward. Plus, having that small forward eligibility for Ingram is just completely different than rostering CJ McCollum at $8,900. You do get the opportunity to go to shooting guard if you want to try to make that a thing. But between the two, I actually, for the first time since the acquirement of CJ McCollum, prefer Brandon Ingram on this slate.
All right. So before we flip over to the other side, kind of end on the Lakers, top heavy there. Valanciunas comes up. You're spending up, though, as far as the other options. So anything as far as a counter to Jokic or really Howard would be somewhere in the middle. But I don't know how often you'd be getting to a guy in Valanciunas where you do have to spend up, and I don't know how much it warrants that.
He's been better of late. The fantasy output the last two games, 33 and 34, even alongside a Jackson Hayes, who's kind of vaulted into the starting lineup once more the last two games, has been good. But Jackson Hayes got in a bunch of foul trouble last game, only played 17 minutes against Phoenix. And the Pelicans played really, really well there in that spot. And so they didn't even bring Jackson Hayes back out there. I'm worried that they're going to have Hayes out there a lot more alongside Jonas Valanciunas, and that's going to cut into the rebounding rate, I think, in the long term. We don't have a crazy sample size with the two playing alongside each other because it's something that, they've done 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 times now here. That's enough of a sample to kind of start putting the pieces together. But just thinking about it inherently, you get a Jackson Hayes out on the floor as opposed to a Devontae Graham, and that is certainly going to cut into the rebounding rate in the long run. So I think the ceiling comes down a little bit on Jonas Valanciunas. The rostership isn't really there. He's sub 15%. So maybe that's a guy who can squeeze into some lineups, but out of a 20 max, I find it hard that I would even get to a share of him.
All right. So anybody on the Lakers before we head out here, you can just take it top to bottom. I know we're kind of waiting on some pretty big news, so that kind of impacts what you're doing.
Oh yeah. He's questionable. LeBron James is questionable. It's so dumb. It's like, I don't even know what to say. LeBron James is a great play today. So in terms of the studs, I prefer Luka, LeBron, Jokic. That's kind of the order. And Jokic is 12-6. And the price can kind of gear towards that a little bit here. But LeBron James is over a 1.5 DraftKings points per minute producer here over the course of the last year and a half with no Anthony Davis. And LeBron James just makes all the sense in the world to play in a bunch of lineups. He is going to have to do everything for this basketball team. Dwight Howard, I feel like I missed the boat on that. And it's really frustrating, but can't remember. It must've been like a nine game slate or more or something like that. Because I knew Dwight Howard was going to start. And at 3K, I still didn't pull the trigger on it. He ends up going for 44.5. By far his best game here of the entire season. In the preseason, he put up 47, if anybody cares. I do not. We've seen Dwight Howard play in the NBA for years and years and years, and we know that if he gets out there, he's going to be north of a fantasy point per minute guy. He's 3K. There's really nothing to say. I'm going to have him in over half my lineups here today. I don't think there's any concerns we should have as far as him being the starter there with Jonas Valanciunas on the other side. I feel pretty secure that he's the best piece of chalk that we have on this slate. Might end up closer to around the 50% number, but even still, I don't think that that's enough.
Speaking of chalk, we'll get out of here live before lock coming your way. You want a nice little chalk parlay, 3-point prop parlay here? This is all chalk.
Do I have to? You're going to give it to me anyway. You're going to tell me
no,
it
I'm
anyway.
Not. No, I'm not.
Not.
I'm going to give it to you on Twitter at Shander Show as soon as the show's over.
Nice plug. I was going to say, Tony Porcelli, I'm on the Luka LeBron boat too. You and me both. Get on the boat.
You've been accused, by the way, of multiple employees of Awesemo of making words up throughout the show. Foul being one of them. We didn't give enough time to that. Next time we're going to have to come back to that.
We've spent years discussing it on the Live Before Lock show. Trust me, it is a bit that is firm in the world. I promise you. We've covered all that we need to. I don't say it right. I'm very aware.
All right. Well, that and more coming up next week on the NBA Deeper Dive. Live Before Lock next. Hit that thumbs up button, at least for Eric Lindquist, will you? Jordan, thanks for producing. He's not going anywhere, just like you. Live Before Lock next.
the Jordan soulful flute while sitting in a river. That's my favorite intro music. I'm going to request that next time.
Mike's been cranking us out with some rock tunes there.
All right, Awesemo, here we go. It's your old pal Emac coming to you on a Sunday night with T McBee. No, Nick Lepre is not joining us. No, this is not an NFL Live Before Lock. We're doing a little NBA Live Before Lock, a change of sports here, but on for the same time. You guys got to start out your morning with me. You're going to get to end your evening with me here on the Awesemo YouTube channel. Terry, how's it been? We haven't chatted in quite some time.
Yeah, not outside of DMs or on a show or anything, at least. We definitely chat, in our little internal Slack there. But yeah, it's been a while since we've been on the air together here in front of all the good people. Hopefully we can convey a little bit more of a sense of friendliness and congeniality than the last show apparently was. I don't know what's going on in chat, guys. That's a bit, it's you mess around a little bit. There was no actual animosity. There were some weird comments about that in chat, but yeah, it's going to be fun to be here with you and talk through this slate, bud.
All right, so we are brought to you guys by Yahoo. I know you love to hear us talking about Yahoo, but act on this promo relatively quickly because there's a chance it's going to go away at some point in the very near future. So we've partnered with Yahoo to bring you guys some excellent offers. And by signing up as a new user to Yahoo, you can get 30 free days of Awesemo Platinum. So all you got to do is go into the link that is below us here on the YouTube channel, sign up, deposit, and play. That's it. Once you play in a paid contest, Yahoo will send us your communication information. Contact information. Connect, contact. Yeah, close enough. They'll send us your information. We will get you a code for 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. Yahoo's also going to give you $10 in Yahoo Sports rewards points, which you can use it to get into any contest. Just know you have to use a little bit of your money in a contest before they're going to send us that email. No bait and switch there for them. But I love it over on Yahoo. So I'm playing there. I'm running one lineup tonight, doing some on DK. I'm sure you've got the blue site covered for us. So I think we're good. Did they get those salaries updated there?
Yep. We've got salaries have been fixed on our various projections pages. I'm just waiting on the latest update of the boom bust to come through. It looks like they're running a new sim with the fresh ownership. So hopefully that'll populate here in the next minute or so, but actually it just did. So that's perfect. We're just catching up. I'm sure Dennis Schroeder exploded up the board, which yep, he absolutely did since we got that news. So that's a big change that's come through now on the latest update. But yeah, some of those, if you guys have been looking at the FanDuel numbers all day long, you'll notice some of the numbers might have adjusted slightly. We had a few salaries incorrectly listed that would have an impact on things like the boom number and the optimal lineup rate. So just be aware.
All right. And then up-to-date information. Marquise Chris is out tonight with a sore knee. Trey Burke out tonight with a shoulder issue. Frankie Ntilikina is out with an ankle. You've got Cody Martin was considered doubtful earlier today. He is now available to play. He is dealing with a sore back. I think he missed Friday's game or some games towards the end of, or right out of the All-Star break with the sore Achilles. He's just kind of banged up everywhere. That I think are our main moving parts here tonight, other than Dennis Schroeder should be moving into the starting lineup for Houston because Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be out. There's that rule that only one Porter Jr. can play on a slate. So tonight it will be Otto's turn.
That's known as the Highlander rule, correct?
There can be only one. You are correct, sir. You are correct. Laffy was bringing up, taxi driver. And
oh, nice.
Oh, no, I'm blanking. The Deer Hunter. So
okay, he was talking True Grit the other day.
I had to counter with Deliverance, and he said he hadn't seen that one. So because we were talking about some, I felt that the Deer Hunter was a little disturbing there. At the very gritty.
And you don't feel the Deliverance is a little disturbing?
No, that is very much so.
Okay.
That was taking it to the next level. No, it's a good kids movie. We watch that when we can't get Frozen on the TV. We watch.
Yeah, it's on Disney Plus, I think, if you're looking for streaming. Yeah, my dad loves telling stories. We lived in just outside Atlanta when I was, yay high from the floor. I was like 2 or 3, but he, was wandering around, had the town wired, and loves telling stories about wandering out into the woods and drinking moonshine with some of those types. So it's I think you might have known some of those boys, good old boys back in the day.
Oh, good times. All right. Well, we're going to go sort of by position here. We'll see if any news comes in. We are going an extra bonus 30 minutes here. We will talk a little bit of Yahoo. There are 2 games locking at 7, one at 7:30. Then we get a little bit of a break with 2 West Coast games, one at 9 and then one at 10. So this should be a fair amount of fun here. So looking at the guards tonight, obviously Dennis Schroeder is going to become quite popular here with good reason. We've got some other interesting options here at the top. You've got Luka Doncic, who has had marginal inconsistent performances. His last in the last calendar year, he's had, I think, 5 regular season games against Golden State. I wanted to look that up because sometimes they'll defend people a little differently. Now they're without Draymond, no Clay tonight, etc. But Luka had like 3 really good games and then 3 like 40 fantasy point games. So, that's not a stay away or anything like that, but sometimes it's a little concerning when you're looking at him at that apex pricing. You're like, ooh, there is a chance he could have 40. We saw Nikola Jokic last night disappoint all of us, and he got a triple double. So, how mad can you be when your guy plays 34 minutes or so, gets a triple double, but he only had 44 fantasy points. That was just the second time in the last 19 games he's gone below 50. So even when you get everything working your way, sometimes it just doesn't quite play out how you want to. We've got Steph Curry and LaMelo Ball both checking in similar pricing on Yahoo. There's some discrepancy in their pricing on the other sides, or difference is in their pricing on the other sides. I have gone back and forth in my one Yahoo lineup. I had an extra $1. I have $2 extra I'm not even using in my lineup, but I ended up upgrading from LaMelo to Curry. What do you think of those top end guys? Kind of the direct comparison of LaMelo and Curry, and then also Luka, who we can compare to LeBron and Jokic.
Sure. Yeah. And I think that's fair. And I think that's accurate tiering to what these guys are, where the prices land them. Luka's a fairly different play from site to site. 11-7 on DK against the lower cap versus 11-1 on FanDuel against the higher cap. It's still a very, very high price, but that does have an impact. He's 10 percentage points more frequently optimal on the FanDuel slate at 37.7. That looks like, I have it sorted by DraftKings, but that looks like, now I sorted it by FanDuel. And on FanDuel, he's our top optimal point guard or a top optimal play at any guard position as filtered by the DK guard positions. It's a little bit confusing to do it for both sites, but he lands first on FanDuel.
That's good because I brought the DK positioning into my sheet, and that's how I'm filtering it too. So at least we'll be aligned on the player pool.
Yeah. I try and do that for shows because everybody usually goes by DK. So I try and when I do the search and sort, I try and do it on the DK side. So we miss a couple every now and then, but Curry, we know he's going to be at one of the guard positions on both sites. He's a point guard on both. So we get Curry at 92 on FanDuel. 10-6 on DK. He's another one. Big difference in salary across the 2 sites there. And it's another one where it has a major impact. So I was saying Luka goes from the top optimal point guard on the FanDuel slate. He only drops to second on the DK slate, but Steph drops a little bit further than that with his salary. He drops down to, and this is among eligible guards, he drops down to 7th among eligible guards with only a 15.8% optimal rate. He's 33.3% optimal on the FanDuel slate. That's a massive difference. He's positively leveraged on both sites, and I kind of like the idea of getting to a positively leveraged Steph Curry. I know we throw out the warnings all the time about, he's somewhat single lane contributor or dual lane, and if we're factoring in the assists, but he's not a rebounder. He's not a guy who stacks up a ton of peripheral stats. If the shot's not going down, he does struggle to get to those massive ceiling scores, but he's capable of getting there. We saw in the 3-point shooting contest that was the All-Star game, how many threes he's capable of making. Put a hand in his face, maybe misses a few of them, but he's still going to rack up a huge game from time to time. And I think he's underpriced at 92 on FanDuel. 10-6 on DK is an appropriate price. You're just playing the leverage game, but you're getting leverage and a salary discount on the FanDuel slate. So I think he's got a lot of viability on FanDuel. I like LaMelo a ton for an even lower price, but he's pulling a lot more ownership on the FanDuel slate. On the DK slate, that changes up because LaMelo comes in $1,000 cheaper, and he comes in with very similar optimal rates, a higher ownership projection. But I think on the DK slate, it just kind of pays off to save that money, save that $1,000. So on FanDuel, for me, I think based on the leverage and the discount, it's Curry, and it's the opposite on DK if we're going heads up between those two.
All right. Let's, if Jordan has a sec, let's do a quick little odd shopper thing here. Sort of spur of the moment. This is for Curry. So Odd Shopper, one of the Awesemo sister sites, you can get there. It's oddsshopper.com. shopper, 2 S's there, .com. And it's a nice way to look at the different sports books that are out there. It allows you to shop the odds, and we have it displayed for the best odds. If you're on multiple books, you can select it by book yourself, etc. You can do shop NBA bets is what I've done. I've gone up and clicked that in the upper left corner. I've pulled up, you can sort it by best projected ROI or best projected win percentage. That's helpful when you're using some of our other sites that like Prize Picks or No House Advantage or other sites that have kind of the over unders. One of the nice ones here, you can filter by the different props. So one of them I've looked at, so I'm just going to filter by assists here. I want to call out the Steph Curry assist number. So Awesemo today is projecting him for 7.9 assists. The over under is 6.5. So we're saying that is a 68% win chance there of getting that one. The interesting thing is, and let me call up my notes because I looked this one up and I said currently he should get that 68% of the time in this matchup. 7 of his last 10 games he has gone over that mark, and he has at least 7 assists in 7 of his last 10. In 34 of his 55 games, he has at least 6 assists. So he's going to be right around there more often than not and get you a chance to get over there. So that's one that I did want to call out today. It's a little different without having Clay there, because Clay's probably worth a couple assists in a game himself. But this also means Curry's going to have the ball in his hands even more than he normally does with one less heavy usage guy out there. So I do like that one a lot over on Odd Shopper. So
yeah, that's a good call. And just looking at, I was trying to get a spot ahead of you there. I jumped to the last 10 and you pulled up a last 10 stat on me. So now, now I'm on his per 36 table. So he's putting up 6.7 assists per 36. So he's getting us there if he gets us 36 minutes. I think we're home.
Yes, that was, I wrote that up as my little, I've added in the DFS building blocks. I do kind of a bet of the day, kind of sneak it in there. It was Curry was the bet of the day today. So
I like it.
All right, moving down the pricing list, let me get back to my Excel spreadsheet. I created a brand new Excel spreadsheet just so I could do the show with Laffy this morning here, because I was coming on as the analyst. So I was like,
I've been awake. I would have let you mine.
I got to figure that yours is pretty complex. Mine is it's color coded, but just by site. And I wanted to organize everything because Russell Westbrook is at an interesting price point. 85 on DK, kind of no bueno. 68 on FanDuel, looks real good, and a neutral 31 on Yahoo. I would rather find the extra dollar to get to CJ McCollum along with the masses over there on Yahoo. But how are you feeling about Russell Westbrook? No Anthony Davis. There's a chance Russell Westbrook doesn't close even without Anthony Davis being there. We could see him surpassed by Monk, by Taylor Horton-Tucker, a variety of other options out there. How do you feel about Mr. Westbrook here?
Yeah, Russ has been a space station, gradually losing orbit and declining through the stratosphere and then catching fire and, crashing very rapidly toward Earth at this point. I think I'm going to ride it all the way down if they keep doing this. 6,800. That's just too good. It's getting to the point where it's about half of what we're used to pay for Russ Westbrook. And I understand that he's not the same guy, that he's not been averaging a triple double. He's still a 1.12 fantasy point per minute player with that upside. Any given game, I don't think there's a question that this guy could go out there and put up a monster triple double night. It just hasn't necessarily been happening. But once we get that opportunity at 6,800, I just can't pass it up. He looks too good on this spot. 26.4% optimal, one of the more frequently optimal guards on the FanDuel slate. 27.8% boom score probability. Still a fairly robust 35.37 point median projection if we're just even looking at the median. And he's positively leveraged. And I feel like we've got him at 25% ownership on the FanDuel slate. And this is FanDuel entirely. I would not play him at 8.5 on the DK slate, or maybe a handful of lineups, but not many. On the FanDuel slate, though, I would get aggressive about it across 150 lineups. I'm only playing one tonight, like you said, and just because I'm down at my parents' house and he's in it. So I like the Russ play a lot here. You're getting him at positive leverage, and I feel like our 25% is a little high. I think people are just so sour on Russ that even the discounted salary probably not going to draw a lot of John Q. Public kind of ownership.
All right. I am mass multi-entering on DK here, but I could only handle one side. And I've already missed 2 different slates today because they had so many hockey the showdown slates, I forgot 2 of them. So.
That, if I'm being totally honest, the reason I'm not playing the main FanDuel slate is because it filled before I could get to it this afternoon. They ran like a 40K top with a smaller field, so it just filled up, and then so I just asked her. I threw one lineup into some of the smaller ones.
Gotcha. But if you guys want to check over there, there's about 80 spots or so left in the $30,000 baller over there on Yahoo. It's a $12 entry point. There's about 600 spots left in the granny. You can get in there for $1. The 3 in the key, that's the one I like to play, is a $3 contest. You can get in. There's about 100 spots left in that, and then about 300 left in the sevens, which is a $7 contest. There's some room there, but these are going to fill up. They do have no management fee, which I'm going to enter right now because I missed that one last week. They have a no management golf contest already posted for next week. That's the one nice thing here about Yahoo. They tend to have lower rake or management fees than pretty much everybody else in the industry, and there a lot of times their contests do not fill all the way, so you're getting a reduced management fee on an already reduced management fee. It's the gift that keeps on giving. You'll definitely want to check Yahoo out for that fun. All right. Is there anybody else in the guards? I think we owe it to perhaps CJ Ellaby, Gary Payton. I kind of hit on Taylor Horton Tucker. I think of him more as a small forward, but he's out there. Jordan Poole, not a deep discount, but a solid discount play here, especially without Klay Thompson. As we wrap up the guard position here, anything else standing out for you?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot to talk about at this one. Honestly, we could spend a little bit more time.
Reggie Jackson's there. We didn't mention him. I mean, Mr. February.
Yeah, that's it. And there's been a lot of guys that have cycled through that top spot now. Like earlier in the day when we lost Klay Thompson, Jordan Poole jumped up the board. Then we lost KPJ and Dennis Schroeder jumped up the board. Reggie's just kind of been floating up in that territory. But I like looking at some of those plays sometimes. And I think Jordan Poole is particularly interesting. On the DK slate, he's 5,000 point guard shooting guard. Dennis Schroeder jumped above him, 5,100 point guard shooting guard. He's going to grab a lot of the shares that were going to Jordan Poole just an hour ago. So now Jordan Poole potentially coming up as if not under-owned in terms of our optimal lineup rate, at least just a lowish raw ownership total for the quality that he could potentially provide tonight. 0.92 fantasy points per minute for the season. Over the last 3, 1.17 in 24 minutes a night. He's going to see probably 30-ish minutes, if not 30 plus. So I like that spot. I think that Dennis Schroeder, obviously, like I said, top of the board, 32% optimal FanDuel, 42.2% optimal on the DK slate. Top of the board on DK, slightly under the top of the board on the FanDuel slate. We had the star players up at the top on FanDuel based on the pricing, but he's very, very much in play. Slightly negative leverage, but it's more efficient ownership. He's owned right around the very high optimal lineup rates. So I'm going to have a lot of Dennis Schroeder across lineups if I'm building 150 with multi-position eligibility. Jackson's in that conversation. From the fair upper mid-range kind of territory, CJ McCollum is super interesting with a 40.62 median projection, a 18.6% optimal lineup rate on DK at 8,900, 8,600 on FanDuel. Again, too cheap, 22.2% optimal, 19.18% boom score. There's a lot of nice guard plays on this board. Kelly Oubre is another one from that Charlotte game with all the tempo and pace that we're expecting in that spot. He's a shooting guard and small forward on both sites. Getting to a lot of Kelly Oubre in various builds. I ran 1,000 lineups on each site in Cruncher, and all of those guys that I just mentioned are all over all of them. There are other plays that you can throw into the mix too. I don't want to keep rambling here, but like Jalen Brunson, Will Barton, Anthony Simons, they're just a lot of guard plays that are viable plays today.
All right. Oh, I'm glad you had a moment to ramble there. I had an old, somehow I'd copied in an old run of projections. I was getting Marvin Bagley and one of the other players that was real. I'm like, wait, why are these guys coming up in my crunches? I must have grabbed the wrong file, but there we go. Got that straightened out there. I see I am in chat. Eric M. I like that. He says dentist Schroeder. I like that. All right. Let's move on to the forward spot here. Let's include LeBron James, kind of getting us the middle of our trio at the top here. I actually like Nikola Jokic the best of the three. I know that Eric had mentioned he preferred, I think it was Luka, LeBron, and then Jokic was his third option. LeBron, I really wanted to play on FanDuel, on my one Yahoo lineup. I was just, no matter what I did, I was $2 short, and I could not get there for everybody who I wanted. So he was a casualty on my lineups. I went down to ultimately working in Steph Curry, so it's not the worst consolation prize by any stretch there. How are you feeling about LeBron tonight? He's in do everything mode. Are the Lakers going to be able to get out of the play-in tournament? Are they kind of stuck in the play-in tournament? At what point is 37-year-old LeBron going to get another injury? These are all the questions we have.
If he's healthy, I see them doing some damage in the playoffs. I think they're too good. If they have the healthy core three guys, I think they're going to do some damage and surprise some teams. It's going to be a tough road to hoe going into the operation as a very low seed, but they're too good. It's too much LeBron James. I'm not too worried. As long as they get in, I think they're fine. As for tonight, I love LeBron on the FanDuel slate, 45% optimal. Our top overall optimal player at any position, I believe, is the last time I checked that. I can resort here and make sure that that's still the case. If not, he's damn close. 45.3% is the top of the board. He's owned right around that 44%. Doesn't really matter. You can just kind of plug and play LeBron. It's 10-5. It's a fair salary for him. He's got eligibility at both forward spots. 10-9 on the DK slate, small forward only. It takes a little bit of the gleam off the play, but he gains leverage. He's a positive leverage play at a 2.7 leverage score on the DK slate, 28.4% optimal. Still certainly nothing to sneeze at. One of the more highly optimal players on the board, 29.2% boom score. It's just the higher salary makes it a little bit more difficult to work with, but you get basically all these guys, all the important star caliber players are at different and higher salaries against the lower cap on DK. So just DK gave us a harder puzzle today to put together with those star players. There's a lot more mid-range options on the DK slate today. So I think on that site, it's a little bit less of a necessary spot, where on FanDuel, I think if you're not putting either LeBron or Jokic into all of your lineups, you're making a mistake. I think they're just so supremely optimal at their positions that they're just top end mandatory almost pieces for me.
Do you ever set a rule that says something like play one of these three, or I mean, projections are kind of just going to take care of that today, but would you go so far as to do a rule like that on a shorter slate where there's definitely three well above everybody else?
The last wrinkle you threw in, maybe a 5-game slate. I don't think is short enough to do something like that. Like if it was a 3-gamer and there was a guy from each game or something like that, where I was just saying, all right, I want to get one of these guys regardless, then maybe I would. And that's a big maybe. I tend to do very, very little to get in fantasy crunchers way. I want the optimizer to optimize. I want it to build me out all these lineups. So I do enough to get it where I'm configuring the lineups in the way that I want, getting the distributions that I want, but I try not to create groups that restrict player combinations. I try not to, unless it's, very specific situations, I try not to force the optimizer to use players where it's not necessarily going to do it. Because once you start doing that, you're telling it, all right, now you've put these 3 guys in and now you have to force an expensive player here, and then it's not actually going to optimize those last 3 spots for you because it's not making the optimal choice in that big player spot. So it's a decision I don't like forcing on the optimizer. So not really, no.
All right. No, I was just kind of curious on that. I was listening to High Stakes, the new podcast by Neil Orfield, and he was interviewing Peter Hubro on it, and they were talking about a lot of the different settings and things that they do. And it seems to me that the interesting thing with Fantasy Cruncher, it's very well built. You can do kind of similar things about 9 different ways. It's sort of like giving somebody an Excel problem. It's like, oh, I never use uniques, but I put hard caps on all my players, or I make this happen, or it's like, well, we're all getting there. And at the end, and at the end, you want to make sure that these are lineups you would actually play. One of the things I've learned is to set a minimum points threshold, because I tend to come in a little more ham-fisted in some of these because I don't usually have as much time to get it to do what I would like it to do. So there are different ways that I've done it. I was just curious. I know you have the whole sorting process and crunch a bunch of lineups and a more elegant process than what I've got going on there. But I know a lot of people are in the same boat as me, and it's just like, it's caveman. We want dinner now. It's just like.
Well, setting a projection floor is actually something that I do, and I think it's worth talking about real quick. I'll usually run the optimal 320, 315, whatever that is. I'll usually set a projection floor of 15, 20 points off of that. And I'll let it sweep in a big number of lineups. Some people go 10, 15. I'll let it go out to 20 or sometimes even more. But why I like to do that is if you're using heavy randomness, trying to broaden the player pool and broaden the combinations that you can get to, sometimes that randomness will create lineups lineups that are just tragically off base. You'll get lineups that spend all the money but end up 45 points off of the projection because it's just using guys where it's projecting out the random projection that it got doesn't compare necessarily to the median and doesn't accurately reflect like a reasonable amount of standard deviations away from the median. So you want to always be sure to build that in so that you're protecting the bottom end of your lineup builds.
Yep, absolutely, because some of them get pretty ugly pretty quick there on those. All right, I had a good joke there, but we're a family show, so we'll just leave it at that. Back to sort of looking at small forwards, or pardon me, any forwards other than LeBron. As you cruise down the list, we've got Brandon Ingram kind of standing out a little bit here. You've got, let me get my list back up here. I'm getting a fair amount of Dorian Finney-Smith and Miles Bridges. They're at entirely different price points, but that's just where I'm forcing in a few of the more expensive players. They're helping to facilitate that. You've got Marcus Morris in, in a decent matchup here, but he is, who's more enigmatic than Marcus Morris? I don't know. His teammate Nick Batum, potentially.
I mean, that's a good call.
Nick Batum would be great if he'd ever shoot the ball, But that's where these guys are. You've got Terrence Mann in the mix, kind of a guard forward, depending on your side of choice. I'm going a little more in the middle tier here, just because I'm getting more towards Jokic and Doncic. So the LeBron is kind of falling out of what crunches I've made thus far. I think I'm going to have to lock him in and see what falls around that. But what do you like here of the small forwards as you move down the salary list here?
Yeah, so Ingram is definitely an interesting piece. We talked about McCollum briefly, but we didn't mention Ingram in the last run through the guards, and he does actually have guard eligibility on the DK slate at shooting guard. So he's got that 5-position eligibility over on DK for 7,800. Like him a lot over there, 19.5% optimal puts him, let's call it third or fourth. I've got it sorted by the wrong column, but about fourth or fifth on the DK board by optimal lineup rate, but firmly in the mix. There's not a lot of spread between him and anyone else not named LeBron James at the position in terms of optimal rate. He's pulling one of the better boom score marks on the board, and just a solid median projection that you can spread across a lot of different lineup combinations. I like him less on FanDuel. He's 28% optimal. He's fine in terms of the play, but he's owned a little bit more efficiently over there. So I don't love it quite as much on the FanDuel slate, where he's restricted to the small forward position. There's just other options that I can get to. He's perfectly fine as a build-in, but there are definitely other players that I like to get to for like a little bit less. Like Josh Hart, to me, 6,900. I know he's negatively leveraged, even worse, but I like the salary savings that I can get from playing a Josh Hart there. I really like Kelly Oubre on that slate, who's coming up less optimal, but for a significantly lower cost. So you can do a lot of different things moving him around the board over there. So Ingram's a bit of more of a question mark for me. He is at a lower price, 7,200 on the FanDuel slate. So he's in a lot of these lineups, but it's not necessarily my preferred construction using him, I guess is the way I should phrase that.
All right. And that makes sense. We just got confirmation that Frank Jackson will be out. That's quite all right. There's still plenty of guards there to, disperse minutes to. It's not going to be overly exciting. Then the Rockets starting lineup, they, as expected, of course, now I've closed out that alert. Schroeder, Green, Gordon, Tate, and Wood. So nothing really shocking on that one at all. I guess Jayshawn Tate's someone we can talk about as well in that forward spot. He's someone that tends to get a little more usage there when Porter Jr. is out, sort of a secondary facilitator, if you will, in that, or a capable player from the wing that can do a variety of things. Any interest in him at all? I feel like he'd be a better late slate play, but this game is not on the late slate. This is on the early starting at 7:00 slate.
Yeah, that's it's a tricky one. He doesn't take a major bump in fantasy points per minute. He jumps from 0.98 to 1.01 in games in February games with no KPJ on the floor. So if we extend that over the course of the season, he might gain a little bit more. I had it sorted for February. Just I was looking at Schroeder or whatever we're calling him. I saw chat was calling me out on the pronunciation. It's goes back and forth. Sometimes he's Schroeder, sometimes he's Schroeder, sometimes he's Schroeder. I don't know which one.
Yeah, he does have it. We have a hard time saying it. It does have a more German pronunciation when you say it correctly.
I think the actual German is Schroeder, something like that. Like
Schroeder. It's more like Dwight Schroeder right. Is what it should be. But everybody tries to do something to acknowledge that it's not Schroeder.
Right. Yeah, just put some spin on it. And I just have a variety of them in my head from the different ways that honestly that some of you guys had said it before I even worked here, and I was just watching the shows. I picked up some of these pronunciations from some different people. So some of them were just stuck in there. But yeah, I had it sorted for him. So if we jump back over to the board on Wowie and look from the beginning of the season, we can see a little bit better, 1.04 up from 0.98. So you're gaining 0.06 fantasy points per minute. It's not terrible. It's not a go out of your way for spot. He's 12% optimal on the FanDuel slate. He's 6% optimal at negative leverage on the DK slate. He's fine as kind of a mix-in option for low shares, low number of shares, but he's not somebody I would really get out of my way for.
I see someone asking about Diallo, Hamidou Diallo in chat. He is someone that the Awesemo projections just do not like. We only have him for 18 minutes right now. He tends to do better when there's lots of people out, and he's going to get those minutes. We saw a couple games where didn't he have like a 50 fantasy point game like 2 months ago? Some crazy thing when they were incredibly shorthanded. But I don't know. I like him as a basketball player, but just Detroit is just it's a mess. I'm not surprised Bagley's out tonight. I'm actually surprised they didn't rule out Jeremy Grant or Cunningham or someone else, because they did play yesterday afternoon in Boston. And we know that they're just in the midst of a 15-year tanking scenario here. And then I said this on the earlier show today with Laffy, and then they're going to trade for some random big man that doesn't fit anything, like Bol or something like that, where you're just like, why do you guys you already have a bunch of them? Why are you doing this? Kelly Olynyk. They get
what
rid
you
of.
said about the rebuilding project could be applied to the entire city, all their sports franchises, everything they do in Detroit.
Good point.
They do.
There we go. I hope we get to see their baseball team rebuild this year. I hope we get baseball this year.
I wouldn't mind having the Tigers be competitive. That would be fun. Diallo is somewhat interesting though. If we're looking at him, 18.1 minute projection, but we're taking that was with Frank Jackson in at 15.4 minutes. If we spread him to 24 minutes, maybe give him a little bit of a bump there, it's probably going to fall under that. Call it 22. He's a fantasy point per minute player. At 5,300 on FanDuel, he's more interesting at 47 with 5 position eligibility on DK. We don't have anything for him right now in terms of projection, optimal rates, or anything like that looks remotely appealing. But watch that minutes projection. If we get that in the next little bit, that could jump and it could make him not incredibly appealing. He's not going to rocket up to the very top of the board and become suddenly competitive with like Steph Curry and LaMelo Ball and Luka Doncic. But as kind of an under the radar, sneak him into a few lineups play. If he gains enough ground, I don't totally hate it because he is a capable fantasy point producer, 1.2 over the last 3 games, but he's only played 16 minutes a night. So it's just not been there really for him. Like you said, he needs time on the floor to produce, but if he gets it, I could see sneaking him into a couple lineups, not a lot.
All right. We've got a super chat here that I want to mention. I also want to give a shout out. Dope Heathen. Haven't seen him in chat for a while. Just like ships passing in the night. I see he's in chat. Cowboy Smith says, who are the best contrarian picks in a blowout situation? So this is an excellent conversation, and we probably have it once a day on most of our shows. And the answer is, it's kind of hard. Tell a story with your lineups. I would prefer playing it more on a shorter slate or a showdown slate and going with that angle if it's even possible, because we never know what's going to happen. San Antonio rolled out of like half their G League players against Miami and then almost won the game 2 nights ago. We had a similar, was that last night? I've lost track of doing the 2 shows in one day. It's very confusing. Because it's like you get 2 slates. You get here's the slate before all the injuries, and then here's the slate
it's totally different. Yeah.
So, and then we saw, we're worried about Giannis. He may not get his full run, and Milwaukee lost their last game. He got full run and they still lost. So it's tricky to do. So your 2 schools of thought are, one, you may want to tamp down the stars that are on the other side if you think it's going to be a blowout, right? And then that's one way to take advantage of it. Just go elsewhere, intentionally kind of fade those guys and say, maybe they'll play 3.5 quarters and have an okay game, but it's going to take their ceiling away. I think they're asking it as, who do I play from the other side? Each team's going to handle blowouts differently. Sometimes they'll do hockey line changes. Was it Portland we saw a couple nights ago, played like literally the depths of their bench on an already shorthanded team. And we're just like, starters get out of there because the coach was mad at them. And they were running guys I swear I haven't heard of out there. It's hard to tell. I wish I had a better answer than that, but there's varying flavors in shades of it, depending on which teams you're looking at. So if we were to say, hey, what would happen? Let's just pick Dallas tonight. What happens if Dallas starts getting blown out? Well, Luka's probably going to sit. Who's going to do well from the bench? Dinwiddie, I would guess he needs to acclimate with some of the teams. DSJ probably, because we just listed off a whole bunch of people who's sitting from their squad. I would bet Brunson's not out there at the end, but you got to start trying to figure out who's out there. What do they have for upcoming games? If they're playing again the next night, or if it's 2 nights down the road, or if it's the fourth game in 5 nights, or what have you. There are different ways to look at it. What are your quick thoughts on that? Because I mean, it's a great question. Project, it's like an unsolvable puzzle.
Don't project blowouts. Don't guess at things. That's my answer.
That would be the succinct answer.
I mean, that is my honest opinion. You can make the changes that you're talking about, but a lot of times you're making educated guesses at an impossible to guess scenario, where a lot of the time, if these teams do blow out the other team, that's because the Stars performed pretty damn well in those first 3.5 quarters, and then they sit out the end of the fourth quarter and don't get their last rotation. So yeah, you're shaving it down a little bit, but by how much? Enough to make it a difference between a reasonably high projected, high salaried mid-range guy and a Luka Doncic? Or does he still have that buffer zone where he's still a top player, still carrying a bigger median projection, still got a bigger standard deviation, and still has a shot at getting to that mark? We also don't know if the game's actually going to blow out. We also don't, there's just so many factors. And to your point, you don't know which one of these guys is going to be the immediate beneficiary. And a lot of these teams, particularly tonight, as you look around the board, like Dallas is just loaded with unappealing options to me in that setup. A lot of the guys are already rotation pieces that we're projecting for, a handful of minutes. Like I could tell you that if, somebody comes out of the game and they're looking to throw some minutes at somebody, maybe Josh Green jumps from 14 minutes to 18, 20, 22. Does that make Josh Green incredibly interesting at 0.76 fantasy points per minute for the season? Not really, not to me. So there's really not a lot of appeal there. Eric was talking on the last show a little bit about JT Thor from Charlotte. If Charlotte gets out ahead, he's projected now for 15 minutes. He played 24 the last time. Eric talked through, some solid rotations and some actual, he was a part of things. He could be a guy that could get in the mix a little bit more at min price on FanDuel, 3,300 on DK. I would maybe give him a tiny, tiny nudge in that sense. You're looking at the biggest spread of the day with a 10-point spread. A high pacey game where there's going to be a lot of scoring anyway. So that's kind of the situation that I would target. I would do it more situationally where I'm targeting a game that's going to continue to be pacey, even if they change the personnel and you can get to a player like that who there's an established basis for. He just got an uptick in minutes. So maybe that would continue in a blowout situation. So I turned my succinct answer into a big long one for you.
No, that works out. Kind of wrapping this up. Josh Hart. I don't think we actually mentioned him. I guess he's kind of more of a small power forward on DK. I still think of him kind of as a nominal shooting guard. He's a wing. He's an excellent rebounding wing.
Positionless basketball.
Yeah. Any thoughts on him as we got about 17 minutes left? We'll talk about Sunder's thoughts on Hart, and then jump over to the other side. Do you think Dwight Howard's going to get a second start here? We don't have that confirmed yet, chat.
So Josh Hart, I like. He's in my FanDuel lineup, the one that I built. 6,900 on the FanDuel slate makes him pretty appealing. He's negatively leveraged over there, but it's a situation where I don't really care because at that price, he just fits in and he makes a lot of different lineup combinations work where you can get to star players and a lot of other good mid-range players instead of doing like superstars and scrubs tonight. So I just like a player like that with multi-position eligibility, 27.4% optimal on the FanDuel slate. On DK, it's 75 against the lower cap, 17.4% optimal, negatively leveraged, but not tragically. He's in play, but he's a little bit less of a target for me over there. I just think he makes a little bit more work for you on FanDuel where he comes in at a lower price against that higher cap. But I do like him. I would have him in a rotation with some of these other options that we've talked through. As far as Dwight Howard, I wrote him up on the site today. Certainly hope he gets the start. Think he looks fantastic. Obviously, if he does get that spot, solid. Despite this being a blast from the past kind of a play, he's still been a solid 1.1 fantasy point per minute performer on just 14.2% usage this season in his very limited role. 14.7 minutes minutes a night in 43 games. He gets out on the court. He gets the job done when he's called upon. In a 25-minute projection tonight, we just saw him put up 45.7 FanDuel points in 26 minutes. I think it's a smash spot on the DK slate where he's 3,000, the dead minimum, comes up 36.3% optimal over there, leading the slate in optimal rate, leading the slate in boom score probability at 59.28%, positively leveraged. He's under-owned slightly. He's a different play on FanDuel at 3,700, and more particularly because of the singular center requirement where you can roster him alongside a Jokic or some of these other discount centers. He's got a lot more viability on FanDuel. He's kind of just an also-ran, and you're getting a big opportunity cost not rostering Jokic in that spot, and then potentially not going to a guy like Drew Eubanks, although Eubanks, Trez Harrell, Christian Wood, a lot of these other optimal center plays on FanDuel also do have power forward eligibility. So it's really about the head-to-head against Jokic, and I don't like the opportunity cost of rostering Howard on the FanDuel slate. He does have a phenomenal boom score probability over there, though, so he would draw shares where I don't roster Jokic. It would probably all go to Howard with Eubanks and those other guys at the power forward, and I would just sacrifice shares of like Zubac and Valanciunas.
All right, we have a super chat here. It's a 2v2 FanDuel single entry high stakes. This is for Uzi. So he's asking Christian Wood and Greg Brown or Jeremy Grant and Isaiah Stewart.
Christian Wood and Greg Brown, or that's
Greg Brown and his band of renown. I have a lot of Greg Brown showing up in my lineups. He doesn't even have a player history on Fantasy Cruncher right now. So I was going to go look him up and just see who is
he's
this
30.
guy?
Yeah, he's dead minimum 3,500 on the FanDuel slate. -8 leverage score on a 13.6% optimal play. It depends. That answer honestly depends on what you're doing with that savings, because none of those other guys off the top of my head were dead minimum price players. So you're obviously doing something else with that money.
So so
you're gaining enough advantage.
Yeah, it's neutralizing it by going down to Jeremy Grant and up to Isaiah Stewart versus Christian Wood and Brown. I would still take the first one. I'm worried. There's no reason to push Jeremy Grant in these games. It's a surprise to me anytime he plays more than 30 minutes at this point. Stewart back to back, they're no Bagley, but they've got Kelly Olynyk, they've got other guys. I don't trust Detroit ever, so I would lean towards the first pair myself.
Yeah, and I mean, a kind of flawed way to look at that too is you can get away from pairing two guys who could potentially cannibalize one another for fantasy points on the same team. So that idea is potentially also valuable there. So there, yeah, I guess I would lean into that other one. But again, it really, to me, comes down very firmly to what you're doing with that Brown savings, because he's at a very different price point. That's going to help you afford LeBron James, a Luka, Jokic, or somebody like that. So if you're getting to that with that savings, that's definitely the answer for me.
Yeah. So the interesting thing here, you've got Greg Brown has played in 29 games. I don't know why they don't have a player card for him.
Do you have like a naming convention or something? Because he's not coming up in my stats here either. I've got him on the FanDuel board, but his NBA.com stats aren't coming up.
Junior or something in there, or potentially. But in any event,
he is the third. Greg Brown, the third.
There you
go. What did you want to know? Did you want to look up something specific about him?
No. I wanted to see how much he had played recently, and he's been getting some minutes when they did their seismic shift of trading away most of the players on their team or losing them to injury. So he is seeing minutes. He's someone that I wasn't particularly thinking about.
8.5 minutes a night, 43 points. I don't have the true shooting, but 43.7% regular field goal percentage. Not so hot. 20.8% from three. Not so hot. Not an overly stout play here. 2 rebounds a game, 0.3 assists, 0.7 stocks. But again, this is in 8 minutes a night. If you kick him up to 20 minute or so kind of a night, he can maybe give you a little something. It's a minimum price play. Let's put it that way. We've probably talked about Greg Brown more than any other show in the industry at this point.
Well, if we're going to get him in a bunch of our lineups, I want to know a little bit about it, right? Because it's sort of like, I don't want to put $50, $100 behind someone. I don't know who the hell they are. That doesn't feel like due diligence has been done in that situation there. But with Justice Winslow out, there's a whole bunch of room. CJ Ellaby is another person I like watching him play. I like the hair. It's awesome. I'm jealous. To be young and have hair once again. Yeah, those were the glory days. I have to go find some of my mullet pictures. No, it was not a huge mullet, but it was some 80s hair. The rat tail, that's a different story for another time. That'll send Chad into a little tizzy there. And Jordan Jordan may pass out. He's like, what? I've heard of these things. They exist? Really?
Yeah, people actually did that.
Yes.
To put a button on the Greg Brown conversation, across 1,000 FanDuel lineups, I ended up with 0 shares of them in the crunch that I ran. So
I have 16% on 108 lineups on DraftKings.
On DK?
On DK. So
let me see where he came up on DK. Let me jump over that board. And why am I sorted? Filtered.
While you're doing that, I'll answer a question here. Do we like Jalen Green? Neutral play. When Houston is another team that just has tons of players, missing some point guards, right? It's so that they need a facilitator out there, right? So that's why we're all excited about Dennis. Choose your pronunciation, Dennis S. Tonight. But where I'm tepid with Wood, who knows who's winning the Matthews or what wing. One of the wings is going to get 30 minutes. Good luck guessing which of the 4 it's going to be. One of them's going to get less than 20, and the other 2 are going to be. I'd play them on a sub slate. They're on the main slate only. I don't want really anybody from Houston aside from Schroeder. At this point, I'm going to go.
Schroeder went into the lineup. I actually had a lineup built earlier with Jalen Green, and then when the Schroeder play came around, I pivoted to him, and then I moved. It was a 2v2. It was like Will Barton or somebody like that to Kelly Oubre Jr. to pay the difference between the other 2. So that was a 2v2 pivot that I made. I prefer Schroeder, and he'd be the focus for me. I don't hate the Jalen Green call on this.
There is no hate. He's 5,400 on DK. If he was 4,400, okay, that moves him into neutral. If he was 3,800, he would be the new Greg Brown in my player pool. Okay, so it's all based upon points per dollar.
Quick warning on that too. Greg Brown, as of the last update I saw, is a game time decision, so he might not even play. So I would be concerned about that if you're getting to that much of him. But you've got time to fix it, right? That's a later game.
It's a later game.
It's a low price guy though. It might be tough to pivot off of if you enter those shares. But yeah, Jalen Green on FanDuel is only 46, by the way.
Yeah, any team that has him and doesn't have Howard, I should be able to work around. So
that's fair.
Makes sense. We're letting it ride tonight, right? We're on the shows. We're going an extra 30 minutes here. Talk a little more about Yahoo. They are the sponsor for the show. Again,
I did not know that.
going away soon, not officially, but soon is the get 30 free days of Awesemo premium content when you sign up with Yahoo as a new user. All you got to do is come in on the link below us here in the YouTube chat. And when you sign up and make a deposit, Yahoo's going to give you $10 in site credit. And once you enter a paid contest, not the site credit, don't use that, use your own money. Once you enter a paid contest, they're going to send us your contact information, and we will get you a coupon code for 30 free days of Awesemo premium content. Jordan has just dropped that in the link, or just dropped that in chat for us, or Nightbot did. Or Jordan told Nightbot to do it. I don't know.
Are we really on for a half hour, or are you messing with me? Schedule says 7 o'clock.
Oh, maybe I misread it. Jordan?
I'm happy to stick around.
Oh, I'm ready to eat dinner. Jordan, do you need...
Fair enough.
All right, so we got
I had it at 7 o'clock in my head the whole time.
I did my show sheet very early today for one Mr. Jordan Klein, and it was 7:30. So hey,
fair enough. Like I said, I'm happy to stick around. We can throw Yahoo a little free content if you want to.
Yeah, we'll look at some popularity in some of the stuff. We'll stay on for a few minutes here since I did mention we were going to stay on. And then if we get any late breaking news, we can cover that as well. 6 minutes to go, gamers. If you have not input your lineups, you are definitely going to want to do that. Most of the Yahoo contests look like they are going to fill. If you want to jump on over there, the Fast Break and the $1 Granny are the two that look like you could probably still get in, but I suspect the $1, the Granny's going to fill. Not sure about that $7 one. It'll probably come pretty close, but if you want to jump over to Yahoo and play there, that would be fun. I'm going to enter the $7 contest.
Outside of Howard and Jokic, how much of like Olynyk, Eubanks, and some of these also ran centers did you get on the DK slate? Because like I said before, for me, I'm just kind of focused on Howard and Jokic if I'm doing a FanDuel slate, because those guys have power forward eligibility. Not all of those guys have cross site power forward eligibility. Kelly O does, but Eubanks doesn't. Some of the other guys, looks like Isaiah Stewart is a center on one side, power forward on the other. So just what's your mix of big men beyond the two, the Howard and Jokic plays?
So Greg Brown is my second at 16th. Jokic is, only at 15% of Jokic. I'm now going to make some more Jokic lineups real quick. Olynyk at 50, Eubanks at 30, Isaiah Stewart at 14. I'm taking him out of the player pool for anything further.
Are you comfortable with any one of those guys?
No.
Yeah.
Trendon Wofford, only 5%. I'm going to add a little more Trendon Wofford. I got plenty of Eubanks. I'm going to take him out. Nicholas Batum now has center eligibility on DraftKings.
Yeah, love that. That makes him an interesting piece pretty much day to day for the rest of the time they do that. But
he's literally been on DraftKings probably every position except for point guard in his career.
I'm sure. Yeah, at this point, I'm sure he has.
I get that.
I'm concerned about
LeBron. I don't get it for Batum.
Right. But I'm concerned about every single one of Kelly O, Eubanks, Greg Brown, not Zubac. I like the spot for Zubac, but he's only, he's Zubac. He's going to give you a Zubac game, 25 minutes, fantasy point per minute, somewhere around there, right? So
with that first rotation, he comes off with 7 points and 5 rebounds. You're counting your money. And then he ends the game with 12 points and 7 rebounds.
Yeah, that's, like I said, that's a Zubac.
Zubac.
There you go. So, yeah, a lot of those guys are just – I think they're all fine for tournament play. I think they're good pieces to include, especially when we're making uncomfortable plays. Those are plays that, a lot of the public is going to be even more uncomfortable with because they're not armed with the reassurances from our numbers, from our probability marks. So, like a guy like Kelly Olynyk, nobody's enthusiastic ever about playing Kelly Olynyk. At 3,700, he's coming up 24.4% optimal at power forward and center on DK slate. That's the third highest guy as we sort by centers over there. He's super valuable. Drew Eubanks, similar story, 3,900 center only, 21% optimal. He's the fourth highest center. These are 1.08 and 1.02 fantasy point per minute guys over the course of the season, all different situations. There's definitely meat on the bone there, but it's just guys who have burnt me and I think the general public so many times that I think they're going to slip under owned. And I think that makes them interesting but uncomfortable tournament plays.
All right. I'm going to upload my lineups here real quick here. They said Stewart or Zubac. I can never say his name correctly either. I would take Zubac.
Yeah, agreed.
Did you ever own Zubas?
Zubas. I'm not sure I know that one.
The pants that look like tiger stripes that are different.
Oh, no, I know what you're talking about.
The weightlifter pants.
I did not own any of those, no, but I do know what you're talking about now.
Neither did I, and I am glad I never did. My brother had a pair, I think.
Remember Skids? SKIDZ with like the little, like their logo was like a car skidding, like that sign. They were like skater shorts or something.
Oh,
or like maybe it was a beach thing. I forget which.
A little bit after me.
Might have been. Yeah, it might have been more like my like 7th, 8th grade times.
Yeah. All right. Okay. I'm all uploaded there.
Nice. Excellent.
So,
Did you get to any Trez Harrell on this slate? We didn't talk about Trez. I wrote him up this afternoon, but his numbers changed.
Yeah, he was popping up on Yahoo. I didn't end up with him in my one Yahoo lineup. Does not look like I got to him at all. Wow. I did not get a single share of him on DK.
I have him. I think I have him in that final build. I hand built my FanDuel lineup, so I think I put him in there. But like I said, his numbers kind of changed a little bit throughout the afternoon as a lot of these other plays emerged. I think he has a chance to be sneaky. I don't like him nearly as much as I did earlier, but he's still coming up 9.2% optimal on FanDuel. He's coming up on DK, 7.4% optimal, and single-digit ownership and low single-digit ownership now on both sites. I think he could still sneak out a good game here. 35.5 FanDuel points in just 23 minutes the other day. Put up a 20.10 rebound double-double in just 23 minutes. He's got that upside on any given slate. He's a 1.12 fantasy point per minute player. I think he's a little underpriced, a little appreciated in general. So I think I would still, if I had 150 lineups in, I think I'd be happy if I came in 15-ish, 18-ish% on the FanDuel slate on Trez. So that would be where I would have been shooting for. Right now I'm 100% because I only got one lineup.
All right. And I know we're at lock, but someone was saying, would you pivot, or how do you feel about going to Kennard instead of Schroeder tonight? I don't dislike it. I liked Kennard better before Porter Jr. was ruled out. Elevating Schroeder into the starting lineup. I think Kennard is an okay play. He's just one of those guys like him and Terrence Mann and Batum, and they're just like a whole bunch of basketball players. There's a whole bunch of 7th man rotation guys that every now and then someone's going to get hot or get lucky or go on a 3-game run, and then they're going to disappear. And it's going to be frustrating. But he is in my player pool. I have Kennard at 10% of my DK lineups. On Yahoo, he was in one of my builds where I was trying to get LeBron in, and he would have made it work, but I needed to get, once Schroeder started, I had to play him instead. So that made me rebuild most of my lineup. But these are good questions. I mean, it's not like Schroeder's a slam dunk by any stretch. So
yeah, I mean, that's a fair question. We're talking about the difference between, for the season, a 0.75 fantasy point per minute guy and a 0.87 fantasy point per minute performer. So that is in there, but it's baked into the salary. He's at a $4,600 salary versus a 51. The issue for me, if we're talking DK, is what we talked about before. Right in the middle of those guys, we get Jordan Poole, who's also kind of going underappreciated. So I think if I was pivoting off of Schroeder, it would probably be for additional Poole shares. I don't know that I would go all the way down to the Kennard spot, but again, it's another spot where it depends on what you can do with that $400. Right. If that buys you shares of Jokic or LeBron or somebody like that, fire away. Absolutely, that's a good pivot.
All right, let's see. We'll give just a minute here for these contests to go live and the ownership to populate on them. I'll pull up the the DK $300,000 fadeaway here. Oh, nice. They have all their stuff. I'm going to export that CSV. If you want to look at the blue side, then we can also throw out some stuff here on Yahoo. I can at least look at my lineup.
I'm not in the biggest contest of the night on FanDuel, but I have one of my entries in the 13,000 entries, 10K, $4 one. And let's see, we'll look at some ownership on there. Schroeder, one of the more important guys, 38.9%. We had him projected 35.1. That's pretty dead on accurate. And I would imagine in the bigger field, he's probably a little bit more owned. Kelly Oubre, 22%. Marcus Morris, 16.2. Harrell, 8.2. That's a little higher than I was expecting for Trez. I think the final update for him that we were just talking about, we had him slightly lower. But again, a 5% projection versus an 8% reality is that's essentially even. That's pretty accurate to me. Jumping over to some other people's lineups so we can look at some other players. Reggie Jackson pulling 29%. Cade Cunningham, 41.4% on this in this FanDuel slate. Wow. He was a good play today, but I didn't have him going nearly that high. Let's see where we had him projected.
So DK
28.6. That's a big discrepancy on.
He's the second most popular player on DK in this contest. He's at 25. He's half of Schroeder, who's at 52. On FanDuel or on Yahoo in the $7 contest, Schroeder is 57. Terrence Mann is 28. Those are the two guys I have that have locked so far. Luke Kennard, 17%. Again, he was near the minimum salary there. 37% for Marcus Morris. No surprise, he made a lot of things work as well. Reggie Jackson, 36%. Montrezl Harrell, 20%. Wow. I wanted to get to him. I couldn't quite make it work. The other thing
Prez is 20% on DK?
No, this is Yahoo. I'm going to go back to
Yahoo.
Here
Got
in a
it.
second.
All right. I thought that would have been
it hurts
the nature of that play.
It hurts him because he doesn't get enough blocks, and you need the 3 points blocks, and that's why I don't like playing him on Yahoo. He's 7 on DK. Surprising ones. Terrence Mann is at 20.8. Marcus Morris, 20. Reggie Jackson, 20 or 18. Oubre, 16. Bridges, 16. Kennard, 16. So the Kennard play perfectly fine. What I think of is any play in basketball that gets up to 20% or higher and you have them, that's kind of like a field play, right? Because if you figure the average, a decent sized player pool would be about 30 players, right? So who are the top 30 players of the night? Those are the ones that, based on projections, point per dollar, all of that is going to be around 20% for the bottom of them for their popularity. So I think that perfectly fine there for that one.
I've actually, you just mentioned the play. I just pulled up those crunches that I ran to look at the player pool sizes that went into these. There's a fascinating discrepancy in the player pool size across 1,000 lineups on FanDuel. I got to 56 different players. Across 1,000 lineups on DK, I got to 80 different players. That's a huge difference. I
think it's because there's so many cheap big men on DK.
Yeah.
It was just mixing in those guys if you had.
And that speaks to the similar value of a lot of those guys, like we were talking about, like the Eubankses of the world and so on. So yeah, that's interesting. You don't usually see it that big a discrepancy. And it also speaks to the major price differences we were seeing around some of the star players on that slate too.
Moody is starting tonight for the Warriors.
Interesting.
Their starting lineup is Curry, Gary Payton, Moody, Wiggins, and Looney. So I have what's his name? I don't want to say his nickname. Kuminga. I have Kuminga in my Yahoo lineup. Jordan, don't even make me laugh on this one. There will be no pause button. So I have Kuminga in my lineup. I'm now a little nervous, but I guess him coming off the bench is still okay. I wasn't expecting him to start, but I never know what his minutes are going to be.
Yeah, we had him projected at 25.9 minutes, looking like kind of an also-ran play on the FanDuel slate. On the DK slate, a little bit better, 6.9% optimal, 12.15% boom score probability. 4,700. It's not terrible. I don't think his minutes are really going to change from 25.9 where we had him. So I think at least our projections and probability probably hold firm there for him.
Yeah, and so Chat was saying, was this expected? It's Steve Kerr. Who knows? It was going to be one of about 4 players. They'll all, like Terry was saying, I think their minutes are all still the same. You start wanting to think about who they're going to be on the court with, where are they in the rotation, going to be in the rotation, who are they going to be going against. So coming off the bench is not horrible, but I would like Curry lobs to Kuminga. That's what I would like to see, because that's about the only way he's really going to score besides some hustle stats. So that anytime he's not on the court with Curry, that makes me a little less excited by it. But I don't really.
What does that make you feel about your Steph Curry assists prop that we talked about earlier, knowing that he's going to be playing in a starting lineup with Payton, Moody, Wiggins, and Looney now?
So I forget all the different sites, but it's 1.5 for assist. And how many is it for a 3-pointer? Oh yeah. We'll keep him shooting.
Oh no, I'm talking about your betting, your prop bet, your assists, your Steph Curry assists was what, 5.5?
6.5. Still good with that.
6.5.
Still good with that. But I'm going to have to go place that, because when I'm in Zoom, for whatever reason, DraftKings, which is the only sports book I'm signed up to, it tells me I'm in Zoom and it won't allow me to log in. I don't know if that's just some settings I have.
Treating Zoom like a VPN or something like that, probably.
Should I be using a VPN? I
mean,
don't
you
anything.
can. I don't use a VPN.
I don't know how. So
it's not difficult. I'm confident that you can figure it out.
This computer goes to ESPN. The gambling sites are the only thing this computer goes to that's unsavory. I have enough trouble with technology that I don't. Anything that's not out of the box, I don't.
That's my guess, is that it's seeing Zoom and it's thinking that Zoom is a VPN or something like that.
Oh, I got you. Yeah. Because
that's my guess.
Like a team viewer, or somebody could conceivably be controlling.
Remoting it.
That's why I figured it did work. But it's weird because it doesn't have any problems with regular DK, just DK sports betting. So
I don't know. Maybe they're cracking down a little harder on the betting side.
Potential. Well, and I don't sign up on my work computer because it makes me I have to download some location software. So the DK Sportsbook or the regular DFS site I can open just fine on my work computer. But if I open as long as I'm not logged into the work firewall, right? There's all these different rules that you have, because I hate using my phone because the screen's so tiny. Never get old, chat. I'm going to be one of those people. I got to hold my phone out to hear. It's horrible.
Oh God. I used to, did you see Jordan's message?
Yes.
Let's stretch out. You want to have a conversation? What's chat thinking about tonight?
We got DoorDash, we've got Grubhub, we've got Uber Eats that brings you things that you're not supposed to eat,
Jordan,
according to the Super Bowl ad. There's also, you can do your shopping right now. Just open another tab.
Just get up and leave for 20 minutes. We'll still be talking. Go get your dinner. It won't matter. We'll still be here.
All right. Well, we're going to get on out of here. But if you need more Awesemo content, 6:30 a.m. bright and early tomorrow, you're going to get one Josh Engelman with the Process Show. We've got a whole bunch of NBA shows tomorrow as well, breaking her down. We're in those semi-doldrums where we're wondering if MLB is going to get their act together. They're not. So we're going to be looking at NBA and NHL for quite some time to come. With that, you can follow Terry over on Twitter at DigitalB21. I am at EMAC DFS. It is Awesemo_COM. With that, gamers, good luck.